Chapter 35:20. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Lady Jojo carried her small floral bundle and returned to her pear blossom courtyard. Madame Ren asked Wei Ziqin with a puzzled expression, "Why is Jojo carrying a small bundle around all day? Isn't she a talisman master? She has both a storage space and an inner world. What is she doing running around with such a small bundle around all day?" What a joke! Wei Ziqin's mouth twitched. She coughed lightly and said, "Sister-in-law, there's something you don't know. This child likes to carry a bundle around wherever she goes. Whenever she goes out, she'll have to carry it around. This is probably one of her hobbies." "Hobbies?" Madame Ren nodded. "Who doesn't have hobbies, right? Crown Princess, someone from the Night Pavilion has sent news about the Mu family. Would you like to take a look?" Arbor nodded. She took the letter from Li Yi and glanced at it before tossing it back. "Got it. You guys should rest early, too." Seeing her indifferent expression, no one said anything else. They turned off the lights and retreated. Arbor lay on her bed, pulled the blanket over herself, and rolled around on the bed. A trace of mockery appeared on her lips. He had already been crippled and thrown to the Branch family. Old Madam still sent people to the Branch family to deliver this and that. Was this just a small token of her affection? A big family was a big family. In the face of benefits, kinship, and whatnot were probably just illusory things. The next day, Arbor woke up early and walked out of her room in high spirits. She had just moved her small arms and legs when she saw Li Yi land in front of her with a whoosh. "Crown Princess, the Sure family's Grand Elder came out of seclusion yesterday." "Oh, then, did this Grand Elder manage to break the talisman formation that I set up?" Her 3 layers of confinement, recoil, and binding talisman arrays weren't that easy to deal with. "No." Li shook her head. A trace of adoration for the little Crown Princess appeared on her carved little face. That Grand Elder only used 10% of his strength. After he was repelled, he didn't dare to make another move. They're currently trapped in the Sure family residence, trying to come up with a plan. This morning, they sent out a signal to the outside world, but it was blocked by a talisman array. But the Sure family's matter has already caught His Majesty's attention. I'm sure His Majesty will send someone to investigate this matter in the next 2 days. The little Crown Princess replied with an "oh," and did not say anything else. Li asked curiously, "When does the Crown Princess plan to deal with them?" "Let's wait for a few more days." Arbor blinked and walked towards the dining room with his hands behind his back. "Sister." Jolin, who was walking towards her, cheered and ran up to her. "Sister, you're up so early." Arbor nodded and looked her up and down. "Little Lin, you swallowed the bloodshed vermilion fruit last time. The fruit pulp can help you improve your physique and train your cultivation. The core of the fruit will help you comprehend your spiritual roots. You should be able to comprehend one of the 5 spirits now." She looked her up and down a few more times before saying, "I'll get Chochio to give you a drop of natural water and see if you can comprehend the 9th level of spirit water. How about you go to Fish Orchid Planet for seclusion for a while?" When Jolin heard this, she nodded her little head. "Okay, big sister." She definitely wouldn't be a burden to her sister in the future. She would work hard to become stronger so that she could shoulder the burden of the Qiao family and protect her family. Arbor patted her little sister's head and pulled her into the dining room. "Let father and mother know before you go into seclusion." Chapter 35:21. After all, it wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. Once she went into seclusion, it could take a day or 2 or even 3 months. The sisters entered the living room just as breakfast was about to begin. Arbor brought up little Lin O's matter to her parents. Since it was a serious matter of cultivation, Xiao Zhongbong and the others naturally supported it. Moreover, they had all visited Paradise Planet before. It was magical and powerful. Since their youngest daughter could cultivate there, they naturally didn't have to worry about her safety. Arbor's family happily finished their breakfast and planned to drink tea in the living room. However, the little monk raised his little head and asked in a childish voice, "Benefactress, the weather is so good today. Can you take this little monk out for a walk?" Arbor looked down at the little guy and coughed. She took out a pink square cloth hat from her inner world. "All right then. Put this on. I'll take you out for a walk. The little monk immediately showed a look of disdain. That's for my benefactress. Xiao Mu's eyes turned, and she took the little monkey out of Paradise Planet. She patted the little fellow's head. Little monkey, the fur on your face is much better now. Are you interested in going out for a walk with us? The little monkey was originally covered in hair from head to toe. Now, at least the outline of his face was slightly clearer. After a lot of hair was gone, his little face revealed its original delicate appearance. Sister, I want to go too. I want to go too. Xiao's son cheerfully cheered and ran to Arbor to show off. All right then. Arbor thought about it and agreed. She put the little pink hat on the little monk's head. Let's go together. Jolin immediately wanted to join in the fun. Arbor thought about it again. If she didn't let the little foodie go out for a walk, she probably wouldn't feel at ease even if she went into seclusion. Rather than that, she might as well go out for a walk. Moreover, she was curious about how the Sher family was doing. The Chow family's residence was located on Changle Street. They didn't need to call a cab when they went out. They could just walk around. After Xiao Mu and the others exited, they strolled along Changle Avenue. When they saw some odds and ends, they happily bought them all. Sister, the imperial capital of the divine prefecture Shure, is lively. Holding a pastry in each hand, Xiao Sun muttered softly as he ate. In our Mo kingdom capital, we can only see so many people walking on the streets during the holidays. Arbor raised his hand and patted his younger brother's head. This child's birth coincided with troubled times, and she had been living on Seacone Planet all this time. Even though the Mo kingdom capital's public security was still okay, she would still be harassed by zombies. Naturally, she had never seen such a peaceful and prosperous world. Xiao Sun, do you like it here? Xiao Sun nodded vigorously. Then you have to work hard and become stronger. Only then will you be able to protect your beloved home. Miss Xiao kept reminding her younger brother to work hard. Xiao Sun nodded obediently. Sister, don't worry. I will work hard. Everyone go take a look. The Sher family has sent out a distress signal to the outside world again. Wow, they've already sent out their grand elders. How come they still haven't been able to break that talisman formation? This is getting interesting. Ha ha. Some people were teasing, while others were watching the show. Many people rushed in the direction of the Sher family again in a hubbub. Shaolin nibbled on the drumstick in her hand curiously. She turned to look at Arbor and asked, Sister, what's going on with the Sher family? Chapter 35:22. Arbor's eyes flickered. Little Lin, are you curious? Xiaolin naturally nodded her little head vigorously. Of course she was curious. She heard that the Sher family was one of the 6 great patrician families of the Divine Province, a large family clan with abundant resources. Now that they were trapped by a talisman array, how could she not be curious? Moreover, talisman arrays? Xiaolin glanced at her older sister strangely, but she was unable to discern any emotion from the little stoic's face. It couldn't be that this matter had something to do with her older sister, right? Arbor said expressionlessly, since little Lin is interested, then let's go over and join in the fun. Xiaolin blinked and hastily nodded her little head. Strange, she kept feeling that her older sister's calm, stoic face hit a sharp and cold glint. Arbor led Xiaolin, Xiao Sun, the little monk, and the little monkey toward the Sher family along with the crowd with an apathetic expression. It looked like the 5 of them were just following the crowd to the Sher family's entrance to join in the fun. Li Yi and Saishio, who were a short distance away from them, exchanged glances and hastily quickened their pace to catch up. When they arrived at the Sher family's entrance, they finally understood what it meant to be a sea of people that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. There were about several thousand people crowding around the Sher family's entrance at this time. There were even people who specially climbed up trees and sat on tree trunks with tea sets and small tables, leisurely sipping tea while watching the Sher family make a fool of themselves. Too hilarious. Little Xiao Lin's mouth twitched. She looked around and saw many spies sent by various clans to gather information hidden in the crowd. Arbor and the others relied on their nimble movements and Li Yi to open a path for them to squeeze to the front of the crowd. An auntie who was talking until her saliva was flying everywhere said to someone with a smile, "Oh my, there are twice as many people here today compared to yesterday. There are people selling seats at the back. If I want to sell my front row seat, I should be able to sell it for 5 spirit coins." Xiaolin glanced at that auntie speechlessly. That auntie also immediately noticed them. Her pair of watery eyes widened as she said, "Hey, where did you little fellows come from? It's so crowded at the back." If he wasn't an immortal cultivator, he wouldn't have been able to squeeze his way to the front of the crowd. Could it be that these weak-looking brats all had extraordinary skills? The ant looked at them suspiciously. Before she could speak again, a person strode over from the side and cupped his fists at Xiao Mu with an excited expression. "Little miss, I've finally found you." Arbor tilted his head and saw a young lady with bright eyes, white teeth, and smiling eyes. It seemed a little familiar, but Arbor couldn't remember where he had seen it. "Benefactor, don't you remember me?" The girl laughed heartily. "I'm Hao Fei. A few days ago, my benefactor lent a helping hand and saved my life. He even helped me successfully pass through the 5 spirits, reincarnation tribulation, and successfully advanced." When Arbor heard about the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, he immediately came back to his senses. He nodded and looked at her curiously. "You are the female cultivator who was burned and forged by the Thunderfire tribulation that day." Hao Fei's eyes flashed with joy. She nodded heavily and said, "Yes, I will never forget the grace of rebirth. Please accept a bow from Hao Fei." The auntie at the side instantly fell silent. Chapter 35-23. She was aware of Hao Fei's identity. When this fairy descended from the sky that day, many male cultivators were deferential to her, so it could be seen that she was a very formidable person. But now this fairy was actually so respectful to this stoic-faced little lady. It could be seen that this little lady was definitely out of the ordinary. Arbor shook his head. "You don't need to be like this. A favor must be repaid with a gushing spring." Hao Fei bowed and stood up with a smile. From now on, Hao Fei is willing to follow little benefactor and repay the favor of that day. Arbor blinked. "That day, I merely lifted a finger. You don't need to be like this." Hao Fei straightened her face and shook her head. To benefactor, lending a divine object like the giant cauldron that day was a trivial matter, but to Hao Fei, that was indeed an act that saved my life. "Little benefactor, please don't decline." Hao Fei bowed respectfully again. "During this time, I've been searching for traces of benefactor in the city, but I couldn't find you. I didn't expect that I would run into benefactor by chance today." Arbor's eyes brightened. "You're truly willing to work for me? I won't refuse, even if I have to sacrifice my life." Hao Fei hastily said, "If benefactor has any doubts, Hao Fei is willing to hand over a strand of her soul." "Sister Hao." The female cultivators behind her couldn't resist exclaiming. Hao Fei waved her hand indifferently. Her life was saved by the young woman, and if it wasn't for the young woman's help that day, then not to mention advancing into the God rank realm, her soul would have probably been obliterated a long time ago, and even a wisp of ash would have dispersed into the heavens and the earth. Thus, it was merely a strand of her soul. So what was their mention? If she didn't repay the little lady's favor, she would definitely be conflicted and unable to endure it. If an inner demon developed, it would probably affect her future cultivation. The little stoic cracked her small lips. "I don't need a soul. Since that's the case, then consider it as me hiring you." Hao Fei was overjoyed and hastily cupped her hands with a smile. "It's already great that little benefactor is willing to keep me. As for hiring me, there's no need to mention it again. I, Hao Fei, also don't need benefactor to give me any more rewards." At this time, the 4 female cultivators behind her quickly stepped forward and cupped their hands. "Little girl, we've been traveling Jianghu with Sister Hao for many years, and we've become inseparable. Do you think you can—" An awkward expression appeared on the female cultivator's face as she spoke. This was quite a bit of an attempt to force a sale. After all, they were only level 12 great spiritual masters. They were not God Realm masters. If someone could take out a treasure to help Sister Hao successfully advance to God Realm, he must have extraordinary strength. There was no need to reluctantly take them in. However, they didn't want to be separated from Sister Hao. After so many years of traveling together, they had already become like family to each other. They really didn't want to be separated like this. Arbor glanced at their troubled faces and nodded. Then I'll hire the four of you at the same time. I'll give you a monthly salary according to the market price. The four of them immediately beamed with joy and thanked the little girl. The little stoic thought, finally, the Heavenly Pill Dispensary and Heavenly Province Association in the south of the city had hired thugs to protect them. In the future, when her small business expanded, perhaps there would be greedy people coming to make trouble. At that time, with Hao Fei and the others watching over them, she could be at ease. Ao Yi, who was hiding in the shadows, was already silently crying. This was the difference. Chapter 35:24. It was obvious how much the little girl disliked the crown prince when he offered himself to her. Look at the female cultivators that the little girl offered to take in now. How good was their treatment? Unlike her and Xiao Yao, who offered themselves to the crown prince, but no one wanted them. They even had to pay a fee to stay and serve the crown prince. Jealousy was heart-wrenching. Tong, who was also hiding in the dark, couldn't help but glance at the kid beside him. He elbowed him and asked, "What are you doing?" He suddenly looked like he had nothing to live for. It didn't seem like anything had happened. Arbor was in an inexplicably good mood after taking in a few useful subordinates. He didn't think that he would be able to pick up a few more subordinates just by inspecting the Sure clan. Master Jojo's luck was on his side. It was unstoppable. Jolin was also very happy. Nibbling on the chicken leg in his hand, he asked, "Sister, do you think the Sure clan will be able to escape from this array?" It's coming, it's coming." A commotion broke out. Everyone looked up at the sky above the Sure clan. They saw an old man with white hair and beard leaping into the air. Abruptly, he launched several palm strikes at the sky above the Sure clan's courtyard. Everyone heard a deafening boom, but the array didn't shake in the slightest. Then, under the lead of the white-haired old man, dozens of elders of the Sure clan launched dozens of attacks in the direction of the old man's palm strikes. Everyone's eyes lit up. They said excitedly, "It seems that the Sure clan has finally figured out a way to deal with this array after a night of silence. They're launching fierce attacks at the same point on the array's barrier. If this continues, the array will definitely break." A group of onlookers were watching the show with relish, and there were also some idle people there who were explaining a thing or two. Such a big commotion naturally attracted more and more people to gather at the Sure clan's entrance. Arbor's lips curled into a faint sneer. After watching for a while, he said to the kids, "There's nothing to see. Let's go home and eat." Jolin and the others had been watching the show at the Sure clan's entrance for a long time. They were basically full of fruits and snacks. Hearing their sister's words, they squeezed out of the crowd and followed Arbor back to the Chiao residence on Changle Street. "Sister, when are you going to deal with them?" Jolin asked curiously. "How did the Sure family offend you?" "They are the employers behind the group of people who went to the Lower Star region to commit violence." "What?" Xiao Lin and Xiao Sun both exclaimed. Jolin took a bite of the apple and said, "Sister, you have to teach them a lesson." Arbor smirked. "We'll talk about it in 3 days." Hao Fei's group of 5 finally understood. So the large talisman array in front of the Sure family's door was set up by their little master? "Let's go. I'll take you guys to the Southern Sky Manor," Arbor said to Hao Fei and the others. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Arbor found Stay Up Late and a few others to lead the way. He led a group of purple forest guards straight to the Sure family's doorstep. The pork that had been simmered for 3 days was ready for oil extraction. Arbor gestured with her eyes. Immediately, a purple forest guard stepped forward and brought a chair for her. Little Crown Princess sat down boldly. She took the list of compensation that Li Yi handed her and gave it a shake. The list of compensation fell to the ground. "Let's shout," Little Crown Princess said. "Everyone inside, listen up." Chapter 35:25. The corner of Ao Ye's mouth twitched. He cleared his throat and immediately shouted, "The Sure family members inside, listen up. You're currently trapped in a triple confinement and rebound talisman matrix. If you want to leave, You must agree to our 18 conditions. Everyone was speechless as they looked at Stay Up Late, who was shouting. Stay Up Late couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he saw everyone looking at him. His voice was trembling with laughter. Cough, 18 conditions. None of them can be missing. If you agree, just shout. If you don't, you can continue wasting your time in that talisman matrix. The white-haired Grand Elder led dozens of Sure family elders and naturally heard Ao Yes shout. He spat angrily. Ignorant brat. Who are you? Why don't you go all out and fight with us? Be serious. Arbor's face was stoic as he turned to look at Aoye, who was about to speak. Aoye coughed and hastily suppressed the laughter in his heart. He put on a serious face and continued shouting in a serious tone. The Sure family members inside, listen up. We have 18 conditions. If you agree, shout good. Good my ass. I won't agree to even one condition, let alone 18. Do you think you can trap us, Sure family members, with a lousy talisman matrix? Dream on. This talisman matrix will one day run out of talisman energy and self-destruct. Just you wait, you little bastard. One of the Sure family elders shouted angrily. The little stoic said expressionlessly, this person's words are unbearably vulgar. Use the 5-blow thunderclap to wash his mouth. Then, she flicked her fingers, and dozens of jade talismans flew up like streaks of light, directly entering the center of the triple talisman matrix. Not long after, a person's blood-curdling wail and howl could be heard from inside, accompanied by thunderous booms. The spectators outside all jumped in fright. The confinement talisman matrix had trapped the Sure family members inside for 3 to 4 days, but had never attacked anyone before. Wow. As soon as this little stoic came here, she immediately set up an attack talisman matrix and started attacking the several elders in the matrix in a matter of minutes. Stay Up Late flashed a warm smile and shouted at the Sure family members inside. The Sure family members inside, listen up. Yell, if you agree to the 18 conditions. If you don't agree, then you can continue to endure. Even the Daluo immortals can't save your clan. The little girl sat on the stool expressionlessly and took out a plate of cut fruits from Paradise Planet. While she ate them absent-mindedly, she threw out one set of rune arrays after another. Stay Up Late was sweating like a waterfall as he looked at his little crown princess. He felt that the little crown princess's gloomy face was a little scary. If she was willing to speak, it meant that at least the situation had not developed into a very bad one. Once the little fellow did not even have the mood to talk, that meant that she wanted to destroy the Sure family. Dragging out won't do you much good. Stay Up Late continued to persuade them earnestly. Don't think that our little master's talisman matrix will run out of talisman energy one day. You have no idea how many similar talisman matrices our little master has. 3 days won't exhaust your food and water, but what about 5, 7, or 15 days? Chapter 35-26. 1 month, 3 months, a year and a half. Ao, you try to persuade them with reason and emotion. Listen to me. Just agree to these 18 conditions. Let's sit down and talk about the compensation peacefully. Compensation? For some reason, the Sure family felt that these 2 words sounded a little familiar. At the same time, the spies lying in ambush outside the Sure family's house had already returned to their respective houses to report the results of their investigation. The young Crown Prince Consort is abnormal. Family head. Young Crown Prince Consort. There's nothing left to play with now. She's going straight to the Sure family's door and using the 5 Thunders array to suppress them. Now she's asking for compensation. Master, in my opinion, it's better to play it safe. Who knows if this fire will burn our house down if we go to the rescue? Such conversations were widely spread among the aristocratic families of all sizes in the capital. Everyone knew that it was that little pervert, the young Crown Prince Consort, who had set up this confinement array to trap the entire Sure family inside. 18 conditions for compensation. It's not a lot. Agree to it, and I guarantee you won't lose out. Get your master to come out and talk to me. I guarantee he was still talking in his head. A slightly aged voice suddenly interrupted his monologue. Who are you? Friends outside. Could you please let us know the truth? In this world, there are only a few families who can make the crown princess come to their door to collect their debts, Arbor said coldly. The Sure family is one of them. Everyone, crown princess, thank you so much. Damn it. You make it sound like it's a great honor to have you come to their door to collect their debts. They must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. By this time, Master Sure had already been helped to the courtyard and stood in the middle of the courtyard. Crown Princess, I didn't expect you to be the one who attacked the Sure family. Master Sure was still recovering from his injuries, so he didn't dare to speak too loudly. May this old man know why the Crown Prince Consort has set up such an inescapable trap to deal with our Sure family? Because the Sure family deserves to die. Arbor's cold voice was like a bucket of cold water, drenching them from head to toe. At the same time, Sure Yongqian was pacing back and forth in her room. For the past few days, she had been strangely anxious. She couldn't calm down. What was going on? Of course, she couldn't have anything to do with the Sure family's siege. This was the entire Sure family's problem. She wasn't the only one trapped in the Sure family's house. What was she so anxious about? Sure Yongqian had been like an ant on a hot pan for the past few days. She couldn't eat or sleep well, and her lips were curled into a firecracker. Miss, if this goes on, Master wants to gather everyone's food for the time being, her personal maid said worriedly. Her personal maidservant said anxiously, if we don't have any food in our hands in the future, do we really have to wait until we are at the end of our rope? Although they wouldn't run out of food in the short term, they were trapped in this house. But as the family continued to consume, there would be a day when they ran out of food. Those Xiozhou with high cultivation could survive without a meal for 10 days to half a month. Chapter 35:27. Poor mortals like them. If they didn't eat for 3 meals, they would be so hungry that they would feel dizzy and weak all over. At that time, they wouldn't even have the strength to escape, even if they wanted to. Sure Yongqian was also very vexed. She was a spiritual cultivator in any case and had an inner world that could resist hunger. However, she was constantly unable to absorb food and was trapped in the same place for a long time, so she naturally felt vexed. Moreover, there were large confinement arrays everywhere that sealed all spiritual energy outside the array. Even if she wanted to enter closed-door cultivation, there was simply no spiritual energy to absorb. In this way, wouldn't she be as miserable as a trapped beast? No, she had to think of a way to get out. Just as Sure Yongqian was pacing around the room, she suddenly heard the little stoic's ice-cold voice that sounded like broken pearls falling on a plate clearly coming from outside the room. Sure Yongqian's entire body inexplicably trembled violently several times. No, that was impossible. It was impossible that the little girl came here to seek revenge after her deeds were exposed. But if that wasn't the case, then what right did the little crown princess have to come and make trouble for their entire Sure family? Sure Yongqian's heart sank, and a bad premonition instantly welled up in her heart. At this time, Sure Yongqian heard her father's voice that was holding back his anger. This old man doesn't know what the crown princess means by this. How does the Sure family deserve to die? Although the crown princess holds a high position and is the wife of the future heir apparent, if she can't convince people with reason, then she definitely can't convince them at all. Eli. Yes. Eli immediately continued in a clear voice. The Sure family indulged their daughter and sent people to the lower star domain's Seacone planet with inhumane intentions. They killed more than 100 commoners, and more than 1,000 soldiers from the lower star domain lost their lives in a battle with them. Such a heartless and unscrupulous way of doing things simply deserves to die. When Sure Yongqian heard this, she was so frightened that she fell on her, but on the stool. Was it really because of the incident at the lower star domain's Seacone planet that they came looking for trouble? 2. The crown princess, she actually knew about it? Impossible. How was that possible? Could it be that she had already gone to the lower star domain? No wonder they couldn't contact Miao Sheng for a while. Could it be that Miao Sheng had been killed by them? Patriarch Shur raised his head and roared angrily outside the array. Who allowed my daughter to go on a killing spree in the lower star field? Make yourself clear. Weren't you the one who did it? Stay up late? Asked coldly. Even if it wasn't you, it has something to do with your daughter. Nonsense. Patriarch Shur roared and then coughed continuously. He felt stifled and his heart was extremely flustered. Crown Princess, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Stay up late, said coldly. How about this? Go to the door and open it. We'll let you meet someone. Patriarch Shur really didn't want to open the door. After all, the Shur family had been trapped here for a long time. As soon as he opened the door, he was bound to see a bunch of onlookers, which was really annoying. These onlookers seemed to have nothing better to do. They liked to wait outside the Shur family's door and continue to watch the Shur family make a fool of themselves. How is it? Patriarch Shur, you haven't responded for a long time. I'm guessing you don't dare to open the door to recognize your people? The head of the Shur clan was infuriated. He gave his son a look. What's so scary about the Shur family? The eldest son of the Shur family hurried forward and yanked open the door. He looked outside with a cold gaze. Chapter 35:28. At first glance, he saw a little stoic girl with an exquisite face sitting upright at the entrance of his house with a fruit platter in her hands. She didn't look like she was here to collect a debt at all. Instead, she seemed to be one with a group of onlookers behind her, completely looking like they were here to watch a show. That was right. Although this young crown prince consort had said that she was making trouble at their doorstep, the one who had been shouting the whole time was one of her subordinates. She had not even moved her mouth twice. Crown Princess, the eldest son of the Shur family, glared at the stoic-faced young lady. Who do you want us to meet? Xiao Mu clapped her tender and fair palms twice. Immediately, someone pushed a blindfolded man forward. He stumbled and felt his knees in front of Arbor. Arbor gestured with her hand. A purple forest guard stepped forward and waved away the black cloth covering the man's face. The sudden blinding light made the man close his eyes in discomfort. When he opened his eyes again, he met Shur family's eldest son's eyes. Shur family's eldest son's pupils contracted in shock, but he suppressed himself and didn't call out Miao Sheng. How is it? This is your young Mrs. Servant, right? Aoyi asked calmly. Who is this? Shur family's eldest son immediately reacted. Perhaps today's incident had something to do with his second sister, Shur Yongqian, and the entire Shur family. However, he was also a shrewd person. After thinking for a while, he immediately denied it. He thought that as long as he didn't acknowledge Miao Sheng's identity, the little crown princess wouldn't be able to use a servant to frame the Shur family for some groundless crime. When Xiao Mu saw him flatly deny it, she was neither anxious nor angry. She merely gazed at him coldly and nodded indifferently. Aoyi. Yes. Aoyi picked up the list of compensation and read aloud. The first condition is to offer up your Shur family's second miss, Shur Yongqian's head. The Shur family's eldest son's expression changed. Then he laughed out loud. What an arrogant crown princess. You brought a servant we don't know and barged into our Shur clan. Do you think it's possible to convict our Shur clan with the crime of defying the heavens with just 3 sentences? Arbor looked at him coldly. I want you to tell me who this person is. Then, without waiting for the patriarch of the Shur family to call out, a shining jade talisman landed on the eldest son of the Shur family. Young Master Shur, do you really not know who this person is? He's the personal servant of my second sister, Shur Yongqian, Miao Sheng. The eldest son of the Shur family was stunned for a moment. After being hit by the dictum talisman, he immediately answered obediently. It was too late for Master Shur to stop all of this. He allowed the eldest son of the Shur family, who was under the control of the dictum talisman, to reveal Miao Sheng's identity. Master Shur's face instantly turned ashen, and he lowered his body dejectedly. The Shur family is really a rich and powerful family. Arbor's icy voice sounded again. Have this person called Miao Sheng recount his crimes anew. Another dictum talisman was shot into Miao Sheng's body in the blink of an eye. Miao Sheng immediately stood up and guffawed at the sky. He brazenly recounted all of his crimes. This included how he accepted the Shi family's second miss, Shi Yongqian's entrustment, how he repeatedly tried to find the way to Seacombe Planet, and how he finally arrived at the Mo Kingdom capital after many failures. Chapter 35-29. He then spoke of how he captured Jolin and how he colluded with the Panga clan to send a group of subordinates to throw the entire Mo Kingdom capital into chaos. He recounted it all in a smug manner. Everyone was flabbergasted. They stared incredulously at the smug Miao Sheng and couldn't help shuddering. This person was done for. Miao Sheng deserves 10,000 deaths. Even 10,000 deaths wouldn't be enough to atone for his crimes, Arbor said coldly. We're the Crown Princess personal guards. Here, this person harbors evil intentions and is deranged. He shall be sentenced to the most severe punishment. Arbor's icy voice fell into everyone's ears without the slightest bit of warmth. It was like icy spring water flowing past, chilling everyone's hearts. Cripple his cultivation and execute it in public. Serve as a warning to others. Yes, the purple forest guards swarmed forward and broke Miao Sheng's arms and legs, crippling his spiritual energy. They picked him up like he was a little chick and dragged him to a nearby pillar to tie him up. The pain of having his cultivation crippled caused Miao Sheng to snap out of his daze from the talisman's control. He couldn't help but cry out, "Patriarch, eldest young master, save me. Save Patriarch. I was also acting according to second Mrs. orders. Patriarch, save me. I am so loyal and devoted to the Shi family. You can't treat me like this. Save me. Save me, ah. Save me. Ah." As pieces of flesh and blood splattered down, Miao Sheng let out blood-curdling screams. The onlookers crowding around the Shi family's entrance never expected to see such a gory scene and hastily retreated in fright. The timid women hastily picked up their children and ran home to hide, not daring to watch the spectacle any longer. Arbor said coldly, "Hand over Shi Yongqian's head, and this crown princess will release all the children under the age of 10 in the Shi family." Crown princess, please quell your anger. The Shi family is innocent. The child is innocent, but for the sins your Shi family has committed in the Lower Star region, I'm afraid that even the lives of your entire family would not be enough. Arbor said coldly, "If I don't punish you severely today, how can I face the thousands of broken families in the lower space zone?" No. Patriarch immediately panicked. He was completely flustered now. Offending this young crown princess was equivalent to offending the crown prince of the divine land. The crown prince was so powerful that the purple forest guard alone would be difficult for the Shi family to deal with. Of course, he didn't dare to confront the little crown princess directly. He hurriedly cried out, "The crown princess is wise. Miao Sheng's mistake has nothing to do with the Shi family." At this time, Miao Sheng had already been cut dozens of times. When he heard Master Shi's excuse, he immediately shouted, "Bullshit! Is the Shi family afraid to admit what they did? Did second, young Mistress Shi instruct me to do all these?" Second young Mistress Shi also said that she would capture all the crown princess's family and bring them to the divine land. Then, she would force the crown princess to mutilate herself and beg for mercy. A cold glint flashed across Aoya's eyes. He yelled, "How dare she?" Separated by the transparent talisman array, Patriarch Shi fell to his knees at the door and cried out in alarm. "The crown princess is wise. The crown princess is wise. This has nothing to do with the Shi family. If you blame it on the Shi family, then you're being too extreme. Yes, this was all caused by second young mistress Shi Yongqian." When the eldest son of the Shi family came to his senses, he quickly knelt and cried out. Chapter 35-30. Crown Princess. The person you're looking for should be her. Go, call second miss out. Patriarch Shi turned around and bellowed at an elder. What did this unfilial daughter do to offend the crown princess and implicate the entire Shi family? Xiao Mu carefully scrutinized this family head Shi's panic-stricken expression and she instantly became puzzled. A person's first reaction in a moment of fear and anxiety could not be faked. Patriarch Shi's current behavior made it seem as if he was completely unaware of Shi Yongqian's actions. Could it be that Shi Yongqian had sent Miao Shang to the lower star domain to capture people on her own and had nothing to do with the Shi family? Or the real mastermind behind Shi Yongqian might not be as simple as Patriarch Shi? She seemed to have thought of something as her eyes flickered. Patriarch Shi, I, the crown princess, am a fair and impartial person. I will not wrong the Shi family for no reason, Arbor said coldly. Do you dare to accept my dictum talisman's test? I dare. I dare. Patriarch Shi hurriedly raised his head and said resolutely, I dare. He no longer cared about being a laughing stock in front of the crowd. If he could save the lives of more than 1,000 people in the Shi family, even if he had to lose face, what harm was there in making a sacrifice? Seeing his resolute expression, Xiao Mu believed him a bit more in her heart. Nodding, she flicked a dictum talisman and asked a few simple questions before keeping it. She looked coldly at Patriarch Shi and said, I, the crown princess, want to confront Shi Yongqian face to face. Second miss is here. Second miss is here. Everyone turned around and saw two elders angrily escorting a woman with messy hairpins and long hair. They were escorting her all the way here. Kneel! Patriarch Shi roared furiously. You unfilial daughter! My daughter, my daughter! Madame Shi cried as she chased after them. She wanted to stop them from abusing her daughter, but an elder flung her onto the blue and white tiles with a flick of his sleeve. You dare to cry? Master Shi scolded harshly. It's all your fault for spoiling her all the time and raising her to be so lawless and arrogant. Now, the entire family had been implicated. You've completely disgraced me. Madame Shi sobbed a few times and wanted to refute, but Master Shi glared at her. Shi Yongqian was forced to kneel on the ground. She felt the hair on her knees stiffen. It was so painful that she almost cried. She turned her head and asked in a soft and delicate voice, Daddy, what are you doing? Patriarch, when I went to the second young miss room just now, I saw that she had packed up quite a few valuables and was planning to escape. An elder directly exposed her intentions and looked at Shi Yongqian with disdain. Why was she pretending to be weak and innocent now? When he went in just now, she had several bags in her hands and was about to put them in her inner world to escape. He had caused such a huge disaster for his clansmen, yet he still had the face to run away. This was disregarding the safety of the entire clan. Selfish to the extreme. Unfilial daughter. Patriarch Shi shouted harshly again. What have you done? Quickly confess the truth. Shi Yongqian's small face was pale, and she looked like a delicate little white flower. Daddy, what are you doing? What did I do? She saw the stoic-faced crown princess sitting at her door and immediately cursed inwardly. Chapter 35-31. Her maiden heart instantly started pounding nervously. She knelt there and could even hear her own drumming heartbeat. When Madame Shi saw this, she hurriedly pounced over and hugged her daughter as she wailed, Family head, you're discerning. Don't disappoint our daughter's heart. Our daughter has been well-mannered and sensible since she was young. How could she possibly send an assassin to the lower realm to kill people? How could she be so capable? She's the most gentle girl. Madame Shi wailed. Arbor didn't wait for Shi Yongqian to argue. Her fingertips moved, and a light abruptly flicked into Shi Yongqian's forehead. Shi Yongqian, did you send Miao Shang to Sikong Planet to capture and kill people? No. Shi Yongqian shook her head decisively. This caused Arbor, who flicked a dictum talisman, to reveal a slightly surprised expression as she stared at her without blinking. Heh, immunity talisman. Arbor looked closely at her and found the crux of the problem. She nodded as she said mildly. It looked like there was indeed someone behind Shi Yongqian. This immunity talisman wasn't something that just any normal person could draw. This was an Earth-level talisman, and it was the higher-level kind. It could be immune to all negative effects, including dictum, immobilization, restraint, drowsiness, and so on. Arbor also knew how to draw it. But this immunity talisman, made by an Earth-level talisman master, looked rather interesting. Although he wasn't like Arbor, who was used to making double and triple talismans, the talisman energy flowing on this immunity talisman was very abundant. It was even somewhat comparable to Sir Jojo's talisman energy. This talisman master looked very powerful. Arbor's eyes lit up as she stared at Shi Yongqian. She suddenly reached out and beckoned, and everyone couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Shi Yongqian's entire body seemed to fly out uncontrollably. She swiftly passed through that transparent protective array and was sucked in by Arbor all the way from the main entrance, flying directly in front of her. Arbor abruptly reached out her small, fair claws and abruptly grasped Shi Yongqian's wrist. "What are you trying to do?" Shi Yongqian shouted harshly. "You used a dictum talisman to test me just now, proving that I didn't send Miao Sheng to do those things at all." Feeling her bones ache, Shi Yongqian revealed a frightened expression under Arbor's tight grip. "Crown Princess, I know you don't like me. Ever since you saw me, you've been targeting me. But I've never done anything to get in your way, Arbor's expression was somewhat gloomy, and his eyes that stared at her emitted traces of coldness. "You've offended me from the very beginning." Arbor's fingers moved to her neck and strangled her. "Shi Yongqian, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you're wearing an immunity talisman," she murmured softly, her 5 hard fingers gripping her neck tightly. "Tell me, how should I let you die?" Shi Yongqian gazed in horror at Xiao Mu, who was just inches away from her. She lowered her head slightly and stared straight at him. There was a hint of evil in her eyes, and it felt extremely abnormal. She wasn't a normal person. Shi Yongqian said this to herself in her heart, but her body couldn't stop trembling slightly. "You sent so many people to Seacone Planet to cause a ruckus, took the lives of so many innocent people, and almost caused me to lose my most beloved family. How do you think I'll deal with you?" Chapter 35-32. Dad. Shi Yongqian kept calling for Patriarch Shi, her body trembling uncontrollably. "She's a lunatic, Dad. She's a lunatic, Dad. Save me, Dad. She's a lunatic." Arbor choked her little mouth, forcing her to raise her head and open her mouth with great difficulty. Shi Yongqian's eyes revealed deep fear. She shook her head repeatedly, crying until her snot and tears were all over her face. "So dirty." Arbor flicked her finger, and Shi Yongqian felt as if her throat was on fire. Something seemed to be wrapped in flames and rolled down her throat. It burned her organs and slid to the deepest part of her heart and lungs. Ugh. She tried to spit it out, but that pill-like thing melted in her mouth, turning into a stream of heat and disappearing without a trace. Shi Yongqian was too terrified. Her entire body trembled as she kept wailing, "No, don't kill me, don't kill me. Don't kill me. I won't kill you." Arbor looked at her with a gloomy gaze. She suddenly reached out a finger and very discreetly inserted a talisman between her brows. She leaned close to her ear and whispered, "I will let you, in the most painful way, die in the hands of the person you love the most." "No, impossible, no, impossible. Impossible." Arbor tilted her little head and looked at her coldly. "Why is it impossible?" She leaned close to her ear and whispered word by word, "I gave you the most poisonous curse in the world. I curse you to be killed by the person you love the most, in the most painful and lowly position, to never fall into the cycle of reincarnation, to never be reincarnated." Her voice was cold and emotionless, like a poisonous spring that brushed past Shi Yongqian's heart. It was so vicious and terrifying that Shi Yongqian couldn't help but tremble. Her eyes widened in fright as she gazed at Xiao Mu in horror with an extremely contorted posture. No, impossible. Impossible. You are. Save me, Father, save me. She is a pervert. She is a talisman. Talisman, a gust of hot air suddenly rose from her heart and lungs, blocking her throat and burning it to the point that she couldn't make a sound at all. Shi Yongqian wriggled her body and covered her mouth with her hand in panic. Her eyes were filled with shock. She turned her head to look in the direction of her father and the others, and then turned to look in the direction of the crowd of confused citizens. Shi Yongqian's mouth kept moving, and her lips kept moving. She kept repeating the same sentence. The crown princess is an evil charm master. She's a charm master, a charm master. But the crowd only saw her lips trembling. How could they figure out what she was talking about? They saw her face was distorted. Her expression was ferocious and green. Everyone kept retreating. How could they dare to look at her? As if she had gone mad, Shi Yongqian pointed at Arbor and screamed, "Charm master! Charm master!" She was a charm master. She was a charm master that was not tolerated by the world. As long as her identity as a charm master was exposed, then there was nothing else to say. She was bound to become a person who was reviled and despised by the world. Just like that high and mighty Mu family's eldest, Miss Mu Rochuan. She was despised by the world and abandoned by her family because her ugly identity as a charm master was exposed. Chapter 35-33. Shi Yongqian looked like she was possessed. The young crown prince consort glanced at her coldly and then retreated several steps. She repeatedly shouted as though she was putting on an act. "Hurry and stop her. This person has gone mad." The purple forest guards quickly rushed forward and blocked Shi Yongqian's path. "Why haven't you retreated yet?" they shouted with disdain. "You'll be held responsible if you disturb the crown princess." Shi Yongqian was about to go crazy. She rushed to the front of the crowd and grabbed a passerby by the chest. Her eyes were practically glowing red as she stared at the passerby. She screamed, "Pen, pen, pen, pen." She wanted to write down the crimes of the young crown princess so that this damned talisman master would have nowhere to hide. Arbor flicked his sleeve and opened a small gap in the talisman array above the Shi residence. He looked at Patriarch Shi coldly. "Come out." Family head Shi immediately walked out and bowed to the young crown prince consort. Stay up late immediately stepped forward and handed a list of compensation to the Shi family head. Patriarch Shi's eyelids twitched as he read through the list. His heart clenched and tears welled up in his eyes. This compensation was going to empty the entire Shi family's pockets. Our crown princess has changed her mind. As long as you expel second Miss Shi from the Shi family, her life will be spared. Ao, Yi said coldly. Also, you must abide by the second condition. Hand over all the subordinates related to second Miss Shi and Miao Shang. The third condition is that the Shi family's mine on Mount Heaven Saint will belong to the crown princess from now on. As for the other miscellaneous items, there are more than a dozen lines of compensation. You've seen them yourself just now. You have half a month to settle all the compensation. Sign it if you can. If you can't, fine. Patriarch Shi wanted to cry, but had no tears. But what else could he say? It was already good enough that he could save the lives of most of them. He wasn't a fool. How could he not know that Shi Yongqian had indeed sent people to the lower star field to cause trouble? The little crown princess only asked them to hand over the people related to Shi Yongqian and Miao Shang. Letting go of the rest of the Shi family was already being extremely benevolent. As a matter of fact, the little crown princess also needed this group of people to intimidate those idiots who were ready to make a move. She wanted to warn them not to think too highly of themselves and to take care of themselves. Immediately, the entire Shi family was filled with cries and wails. All the disciples related to Shi Yongqian and Miao Shang were brought out. Arbor looked at them coldly and handed them over to stay up late. "Listen up. If anyone dares to touch this crown princess's family in the future, I'll kill them. These people will serve as a warning to you. Life is precious. Don't disregard the life and death of your family. If there's anyone from a Shi family who wants to avenge these people, come at me if you're not afraid of death. Don't blame this crown princess for not warning you." Arbor looked at Patriarch Shi coldly. "If anyone from the Shi family comes looking for this crown princess for revenge, this crown princess will destroy your entire family. Don't bring trouble to yourselves." Patriarch Shi's pupils shrank. He quickly shouted, "No, we wouldn't dare. We wouldn't dare. The Shi family has no intention of disrespecting the crown princess." The Sher family is willing to sign the contract and serve the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince for generations to come. Good that you're sensible, Arbor said coldly, her stoic face expressionless. Chapter 35-34. Tong. Form a small debt collection team and collect all of the Sher family's debts within half a month. When the time comes, transport them to Seacombe Planet. Yes, Crown Princess. The Mo Kingdom capital had suffered a great calamity and urgently needed supplies and money to support it. On what basis could those people peacefully sit in this divine province and enjoy life after throwing the city's citizens into utter chaos and losing both their wealth and lives? They had to compensate, even if it wasn't the Sher family's fault. Who told them to raise such a troublemaker daughter? Since they didn't know how to raise a child, then they would bear the bitter consequences this child brought them. Leaving behind Aoyi and his group to supervise the punishment, Arbor then left first with Saishio and Li. The young crown prince consort walked anxiously at the front, her back view seeming a bit lonely. Saishio and Li exchanged glances before hastily chasing after her. For some reason, although the crown princess was unstoppable in her massacre, Saishio and Li could both sense that the young crown princess was currently in a bad mood. In reality, the young crown princess was indeed in a very bad mood. She walked extremely quickly, and as her plain white robes fluttered, a sense of irritation arose spontaneously. Although I've settled a long-standing enmity, reality has proven that I'm not happy right now. How I wish that you were by my side right now. Accompanying me, her icy eyes turned slightly, and she suddenly saw peach blossoms fluttering and scattering in the sky. In her daze, she saw a red-clothed man holding a small pink umbrella walk to her side with light steps. He said with a grin, "Aya, my Jojo seems to be in a very bad mood." Arbor glanced at him and saw that he was actually carrying a bald little monk in his hand. That little thing kept kicking his legs and clasped his palms together, saying in all seriousness, "Benefactor, don't carry this little monk. This little monk isn't a rice bag. Go comfort my family's benefactor then," the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said as he stuffed that little bald head into Arbor's arms. "Benefactor, your aura of malice is so heavy. You don't know how to speak." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smacked the little fellow's bald head. "What nonsense are you talking about? My Jojo has always been a soft and adorable little fellow. Where did you get your hostility from?" The little monk wrinkled his nose and said in all seriousness, "Benefactor, it's not right for you to lie through your teeth. Benefactress, how about this little monk recite a meditation mantra for you?" Xiao Mu's extremely bad mood inexplicably turned for the better after the two people's jesting and jabbering. She nodded and raised her hand to stroke little Baldy's slippery head. "You can read it. Namo, he luo na, duo luoi, namo, ajay." As a result, little Baldy's noisy voice rang incessantly by the young crown prince consort's ears, incessantly prattling on and on. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help but roll his eyes. Why did he have the misconception that he should not have let this nagging little Baldy out? Miss Qiao carried the nagging little monk and returned to the Qiao family's courtyard. Naturally, she did not mention it. Meanwhile, after the horrified Shi Yongxian saw the crown prince consort leave, she immediately leaped in front of her father, family head Shi, and hugged her father's arms. Her throat continuously emitted cracking noises, but she couldn't utter a single word. She glanced at a withered branch on the ground and hurriedly let go of family head Shi's hands. She rushed over to pick up the branch and gestured repeatedly on the ground. But who would have the patience to watch her gesticulate like a crazy woman? Chapter 35-35. The head of the Shi family didn't even look at her and turned to leave. Shi Yongxian rushed forward to block the head of the Shi family. She gesticulated anxiously and waved the branch in her hand, gesturing incessantly at the head of the Shi family. Since she couldn't speak, the head of the Shi family was impatient to the extreme. Seeing that she was still stubbornly blocking his way, he impatiently slapped her across the face. Wicked girl, get out of my way. The eldest son of the Sure family was also furious. The Sure family had so many assets. Just because of this brainless sister of his had committed such a heinous crime, they had to hand it all over to someone else. How could he accept this? How could he be willing? Right now, he wanted nothing more than to kill this foolish sister of his who couldn't do anything right. He pushed Sure Yongxian away forcefully and shouted angrily, "Haven't you had enough of being a fool? Don't you think you've caused enough harm to the family? If you still have a shred of conscience, you'd better get out of the family from now on and stay as far away from the Sure family as possible. The Sure family won't care whether you live or die in the future." Madame Sure wailed and lunged forward to hit her son. "That's your biological sister. Eldest son, how could you say that?" Sure Yongxian fell to the ground and used the branch in her hand to draw on the ground with all her might. As she was drawing, she suddenly realized that her hands were not under her control at all. Just now, her messy actions in front of them had not drawn a single word at all. It was no wonder that everyone was staring at her in bewilderment. What was going on? Could it be that her brain couldn't control her hands anymore? Sure Yongxian stared at her hands in horror. She tried to draw on the ground with all her might, but all she could see was a mess on the ground. She couldn't make out a single word at all. What had this demon-like crown Prince Consort done to him? Why couldn't her hands even write? She couldn't even write the simple words, "Talisman Master." She couldn't write. She couldn't speak, and her hands couldn't write. How could she complain to others about her grievances? How could she expose that evil Talisman Master to the public? Sure Yongxian scrambled to her feet like a madwoman and threw herself at her parents with all her might. The head of the Sure family ordered with a cold face, "Close the door. From now on, the Sure family will no longer have such an embarrassing daughter." Bang! The two heavy pear blossom wooden doors slammed shut right in front of Sure Yongxian. Madame Sure originally wanted to scream, but after being hit by Patriarch Sure's hand, she naturally fainted and stopped screaming. "Father, mother, father, mom." Sure Yongxian pounded on the door with all her might and screamed silently. She could not believe that there would be a day where she would be chased out of the Sure family. It was all because of the crown princess. It was all because of that bitch that she was chased out of the Sure family and caused her body to become abnormal. She couldn't even speak, and her mind was muddled. She wanted to kill that woman. She wanted to kill that woman. Sure Yongxian went crazy. When she saw the citizens around her, she rushed over like a madwoman. When the commoners saw that she had gone crazy, they immediately scattered like birds and beasts. They all scattered and ran out. Sure Yongxian caught hold of a middle-aged woman. Filled with anger, she turned it into a palm and hit the woman's head. The people around her screamed in shock. They thought that the woman would die after being hit by the second daughter of the Sure family. Chapter 35-36. Who would have thought that second Miss Sure's slap would land on the woman's head like cotton? Not to mention hurting the woman in the slightest. Her strength probably wouldn't even be able to kill a mosquito. The woman was originally scared to the point that her face was ashen, but in an instant, she regained her senses as if she had been revived. She pushed away the second young miss of the Sure family and swung her thick and round arm, heavily slapping Sure Yongxian's face. "You little wench, how dare you hit me? If I don't show you my power, you think you're invincible." As she spoke, the woman slapped Sure Yongxian's face several times in a row, causing her head to hit the dirt wall next to her. Sure Yongxian's eyes were filled with fear and disbelief. Her lips trembled as she looked down at her hands and shook her head repeatedly. Her expression was extremely frightened. No, it's impossible. It's impossible. How could she not have any cultivation? She didn't have any cultivation? No, it couldn't be. It must have been her imagination. How could she have become a cripple? No, she wasn't a cripple. She definitely shouldn't be a cripple. She was Sure Yongxian, the high and mighty second miss of the Sure family. She was a master blacksmith, the second miss who had 5 levels of spiritual fire and was in the spiritual realm. She had become a cripple. It was Arbor. It must be Arbor. Arbor had given her that fiery pill before and had crippled all her cultivation. What right does a good-for-nothing like you? who can't even take care of yourself, have to stay by the young master's side? Ridiculous. A cripple like you should die. Why aren't you dead yet? Don't you think you're a cripple living in this world with broken arms and legs like a bedbug? Ha ha! A cripple, a cripple, a cripple. A pair of indifferent eyes stared coldly at the woman who was being pushed to the ground and kicked by the fat woman. He pursed his thin lips and didn't say a word. Second master, do you want this subordinate to go and save second monsieur? Who asked you to be a busybody? When the subordinate heard his master's words, he immediately lowered his head and didn't dare to say anything else. Jojo, if you want Shi Yongqian to become a cripple, then I'll do as you wish. Second young master looked at Shi Yongqian coldly and then turned to leave. Shi Yongqian, have you ever thought that in this life, the one who has become a cripple is you? Second young mistress Shi turned around and happened to see a familiar piece of clothing at the corner of the street. The color and style of the fabric at the corner of the clothing were so familiar. Xian. Second young mistress Shi crawled a few steps on the ground in panic. She wanted to shout, but there was no sound. The Shi family's second young mistress finally got up from the ground and stumbled a few steps before she was blocked by a few ruffians and hooligans. A trace of panic flashed through Shi Yongqian's eyes. She dug her fingers into the wall and shook her head at those hooligans. Her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as she angrily shouted. Without any sound, there would naturally be no deterrence. Oh, so you're mute. What an ugly face with a bloody head. Her figure is not bad. A few ruffians with bad intentions surrounded Shi Yongqian and grabbed her hands and started to grope her. Second master, second young mistress Shi, seems to have been pestered by a few hooligans. You talk too much. Qin Xian glanced at the subordinate indifferently. He didn't even look back at Shi Yongqian and immediately left with his men. Chapter 35-37. Xian, don't go. Xian, save me, don't go. Xian. Shi Yongqian's eyes revealed a look of despair. She stumbled and tried to break free from the hooligan's encirclement, but someone reached out and hugged her waist. A few hands wandered back and forth on her body with evil intentions. She was so shocked that her eyes rolled back, and she almost fainted. Without her cultivation and spiritual power, Shi Yongqian was nothing more than a cripple. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't even beat these soft-footed hooligans in front of her. She could only silently cry and wait for them in horror. Her mouth squirmed as she kept shouting, "Let go of me, let go of me." But those hooligans already had crooked thoughts. How could they let go of the prey that was already in their hands? They dragged her into the alley at the side. The crowd that was originally watching the show couldn't help but slowly disperse. Looking at the Shi family's second young mistress being dragged away by the hooligans, some people couldn't help but sigh and shake their heads. The young mistress of the Shi family actually fell into such a state. Her life is worse than a dog's. Shi Yongqian was dragged all the way into the alley. She looked at the ugly hooligans surrounding her in horror. She couldn't help but wave her hands, wanting to resist. Unexpectedly, he was slapped in the face, and the cloth on his shoulder was rudely torn by the person. Shi Yongqian let out a silent scream and hurriedly used her hands to close her clothes. Who would have thought that in the next second, she would be hugged by a local ruffian? With a forceful tug, her clothes were torn apart. As the clothes on her body became less and less, her snow-white skin was clearly seen under the sunlight. The hooligans swallowed their saliva. Their eyes flashed with excitement, and they suddenly pounced on the Shi family's second young mistress. Shi Yongqian couldn't make a sound at all. Moreover, she was a soft-footed waste with no cultivation. She couldn't stop these lowly hooligans in front of her. When night fell, the Shi family's second young mistress, who was filthy and ruined, crawled out of the alley like a ghost. Her tears had long dried up the moment she was bullied. What grievances! What hatred! Now, they had all turned into defeat and emptiness. She was like a wandering soul, walking on the street in ragged clothes. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, and only a dried blood clot remained on her forehead. She was like a wandering ghost, swaying her body as she walked. Every step she took left a trail of blood, leaving a long trail of blood on the ground. A night watchman was walking towards her. When he saw second Miss Scher's ghostly appearance, he was so frightened that he screamed, thinking that he had seen a ghost. He even threw the night watchman's drum on the ground with a clang and turned around to stumble back to where he came from. Sher Yongqian's head was tilted. Every step she took left a bloody footprint. Her tattered clothes hung on her body like strips. Looking from afar, she really looked like a female ghost that had crawled out from the depths of hell. Even her eyes didn't have a trace of life. The crown princess had forced her to her death. It was the crown princess who forced her to her death. Sher Yongqian stubbornly shouted these words in her heart. She swayed all the way to the entrance of the palace. Today, she was going to hang herself at the entrance of the palace and use her blood to write down her crimes in arbor. Even if she died, she wanted this heartless woman to go to hell with her. She swayed as she walked. Suddenly, she collapsed on the street as if she was exhausted. Chapter 35-38. It was as if the scene of those ruffians tearing her clothes appeared in front of her eyes. That devilish, teasing laughter lingered in her ears for a long time. They were so unbridled as they behaved atrociously on her body, tormenting her in such a cruel manner, tormenting her for several hours. Several hours, in broad daylight, in a small alley like that. She already couldn't count how many people had bullied her. In the end, her body was already numb beyond belief. Sher Yongqian's eyes were red as she forcefully hammered the ground a few times with both hands. Her eyes were filled with empty hatred as she slowly raised her head. Under the illumination of the bright lanterns, she saw the two large characters of the Qin estate. Tears immediately welled up in Sher Yongqian's eyes. Like a worm, she climbed up the tall steps one by one and used her hands to pound on the vermilion door twice. At this time, the street was very quiet. It was already very late at night, and there wasn't a single person on the street. Only Sher Yongqian was like a madwoman as she desperately hammered on the Qin estate's door. However, she was already exhausted. Even if she used all her strength to pound on the door, the sound of knocking was actually just an inaudible dong-dong-dong sound. The servants guarding the door had already fallen asleep and naturally couldn't hear the sound of knocking outside. More and more tears welled up in Sher Yongqian's eyes. She really wanted to go in and ask second young master if he had also passed by the Sher estate's entrance just now. Did he leave her in the lurch? Or was her eyes playing tricks on her? No, that couldn't be. Sher Yongqian comforted her own heart as she collapsed in front of the Qin estate's entrance, repeatedly shaking her head. If a Xian saw her being driven out by her family, he definitely wouldn't stand idly by. If a Xian had passed by the Sher estate, there was no way he wouldn't have seen those ruffians harassing her. He also wouldn't have left with a flick of his sleeves and completely disregarded her life or death. Sher Yongqian's tears fell one by one, dripping onto the ground. Her eyes were filled with tears, completely blurring the night scene in front of her eyes. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in front of her. Sher Yongqian raised her head in astonishment. When she saw the person's face clearly, her eyes couldn't help but reveal an ecstatic expression. Decoration. Wang Cheng? Wasn't he the second young master's personal bodyguard? Wang Cheng? When Huang Yong lifted her up, Sher Yongqian immediately panicked. She lowered her head and looked at the state of her clothes. She hurriedly wrapped her arms around her body, trying her best to hide all the messy marks on her body. Unfortunately, she was almost naked to begin with. No matter how tightly she hugged herself, it was impossible to cover up the lingering marks on her body. No, don't take me to see second young master. I'm so dirty right now. I don't want to see second young master. Sher Yongqian began to cry. She shook her head repeatedly and opened her mouth to speak a series of words. Wang Cheng naturally could not hear her voice. He carried her to the crane garden where the second young master lived. Sher Yongqian felt that today was the darkest day of her life. She was actually forced to appear in the crane garden with her unkempt and filthy appearance. She looked at the young master of the Omega Kitoku, who was sitting in the pavilion and playing chess with an enchanting woman in red. He merely sat there without saying anything. Those exquisite features revealed a faint coldness. Under the moonlight, he appeared as handsome and natural as a jade sculpture. Such a beautiful second young master made sure Yongxian inexplicably feel a trace of inferiority. Chapter 35-39. She hurriedly took a step back, wanting to retreat behind the rockery to hide. Her body was really too dirty, and she didn't want to meet the godlike man in her heart at this time. The enchanting red-clothed woman in the pavilion raised her eyes and chuckled. "Oh, why do you look so disheveled? You look very miserable." Young Master Omega Kitoku placed a piece and frowned. "You're about to lose. So what if I lose? It's not like I've lost to you for the first time. Do I need you to remind me?" That woman winked seductively and flipped over to sit on the chess table, throwing herself into second young master's arms. The twins, Tang Quan and Tang Li, who were standing beside the two, couldn't help but feel disgusted. In the past, they didn't know that Ling was a man. Now that they knew that this freaking old demon liked to pretend to be a woman, they felt that she was strange no matter where they looked at her, and usually kept a respectful distance from her. Young Master Omega Kitoku naturally wouldn't let her throw herself at him, and he directly dodged to the side. Flicking his sleeves, he indifferently said, "Take her to the confinement room." Then, he left without even looking at the item before he used it. Sure, Yongxian's heart instantly sank to the bottom of the valley, as if it had fallen into an ice cellar. Was second young master so disgusted that he felt that even a glance at her would dirty his eyes? Just like that, sure, Yongxian's tears fell uncontrollably, and she couldn't hold them back at all. Ling clicked his tongue and threw a green robe to her. "Here, little lady, put it on. TSK, TSK. So pitiful. A delicate little beauty has been tormented to this extent. These people are really heavy-handed." Sure, Yongxian could hear the mockery in his voice, but there wasn't much sympathy. Her ice-cold fingers tightly gripped the robe on her body, and she found that she was once again picked up by Wang Cheng and brought to the confinement room that young Master Omega Kitoku had mentioned. Of course, she knew what kind of place the confinement room was. It was a small confinement room that the Qin estate used to treat prisoners. She had already suffered such a huge grievance, and second young master still wanted to interrogate her as if she was a criminal? Why? Why'd he treat her like this? The bitterness in Sure Yongxian's heart almost drowned her. "Go in." Huang Cheng forcefully pushed her away, and Sure Yongxian's head crashed into a small room. When she turned around, the entire room had already turned dark, and she could only hear a loud clang sound. She pounced to the side of the metal door and knocked heavily on it, calling out silently, "Ixan, Ixan." On the other hand, Arbor only received a message from the night pavilion after breakfast, saying that Sure Yongxian had been bullied badly by a group of hooligans. After Stay Up Late finished his report, he stood to the side and looked at the little crown princess, who had an uncertain expression on her face. The crown princess didn't look happy. Her brows were gloomy, as if a thick dark cloud was pressing down on her, which could erupt at any time. "Shameless," Arbor shouted angrily. "Take some men and find those people. Castrate them all and send them to the Prince of Giant Pain's estate to be eunuchs. This crown princess wants this group of animals to beg for death for the rest of their lives." Stay Up Late's mouth twitched, but he didn't dare to say anything else. He could only nod and leave. Xiao Mu forcefully smashed a cup, her face brimming with anger. Kai Shou hurriedly went forward to clean up the broken pieces. Kai Chi didn't understand, but she still asked boldly, "Your Highness, why is the crown princess unhappy?" Chapter 35-40. Wasn't it good that second young Mistress Sure received her retribution? Hadn't the crown princess always looked down on second young mistress? Why was she standing up for her now? Kai Chi's little head was filled with questions. Kai Shou hurriedly tugged at her sleeve, hinting that she shouldn't play dumb. The young crown princess said angrily, "Such despicable methods are extremely disgusting." If she wanted to deal with someone, why would she need to resort to such underhanded methods? She could just face the enemy openly. Even if she was an evil person, she should do it openly. She disdained to resort to such tricks. As a woman, she naturally knew what Shi Yongqian's experience yesterday meant. Kai Xiao, why are you tugging at me? Kai Chi scratched her head in astonishment. The young crown princess had already left the dormitory angrily. Kai Chi couldn't help but ask in a low voice, I really don't understand why the crown princess is angry. You're such a blockhead. Now that something like this has happened, others will definitely think that the crown prince consort sent someone to do it. Even if it's just an accident, how can the crown princess be willing to take the blame? Kai Xiao shook her head and pursed her lips. She lowered her voice and said, if the crown princess doesn't use a thunderous method and immediately make statement, rumors might spread throughout the imperial capital in the afternoon. Oh, Kai Chi looked enlightened. She raised her hand and patted her head. She said in annoyance, Sister Kai Xiao, you're still the smart one. I'm really too stupid. I can't even understand such simple logic. It was no wonder the crown princess was angry. The crown princess had just caused a ruckus at the Shi family's doorstep yesterday, forcing the Shi family to banish second young mistress Shi. At night, some hooligans took turns to rape second young mistress Shi. If news of this spread, perhaps everyone would secretly speculate that the crown princess was the one behind it. Even if they didn't dare to spread rumors, it would be detrimental to the crown princess' reputation. The crown princess had dealt with those ruffians in a particularly vicious manner. Firstly, she could convince people, and secondly, she could vent the anger in her heart. Our young crown prince consort is very proud and arrogant. You want to venture? That depends on whether our crown princess is willing to accept it or not. Kai Chi puffed up her cheeks. There are thousands of things in the world. The crown princess has her own set of principles. As servants, we should listen more and watch less and not interrupt. Kai Chi nodded, and the two of them pushed open the door and walked out. The crown princess dealt with the matter promptly. Those ruffians and hooligans were castrated that night and sent to the king of Giant Pain's mansion. In the evening, the crown princess' righteousness spread through the streets. Once she made a move, she used thunderous methods to eliminate a few big gangsters who had been mingling in the neighborhood all year round. Getting rid of evil for the people, the crowd applauded and cheered. King Giant Pain was so angry that he couldn't vent his anger. At that time, he took over those ruffians and hooligans with a dumbfounded expression. Even in the afternoon, he was still nagging about how the little crown princess treated his king of Giant Pain's mansion like a garbage dump. She threw as much garbage as she wanted, which was simply infuriating to the old king of Giant Pain. The crown prince of Giant Pain persuaded the old king of Giant Pain. Little sister-in-law crown princess is filial and sent a few people to serve father. Father, please accept them. The old king of Giant Pain was so angry that he almost spat a mouthful of blood on his son's face. You shameless brat, since when did you address the crown princess as little sister-in-law respectfully? Chapter 35:41. After the little crown princess dealt with those ruffians in a thunderous manner, the rumors naturally didn't spread. On the other hand, Shi Yongqian had been locked up in that small, sealed room for more than 3 days now. In these 3 days, no one came to visit her. Shi Yongqian's days were getting more and more hopeless. She felt as if she had been forgotten by the entire world and that no one could remember her. Her heart was filled with deep hatred. She hated the heartlessness of her parents and brothers, and she also hated Arbor for causing her to be in this state. The only person she didn't hate was the second young master who ordered people to throw her into this small, sealed room. In her heart, she was still trying to find excuses for the second young master. The second young master must have been delayed by something these 2 days. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ignored her life and death. The funny thing was, the second young master she was trying to find excuses for was really so busy that he had forgotten about her, and completely forgot about her. That evening, the iron door that had been sealed for 3 days and 3 nights finally made a sound. Shi Yongqian was both shocked and delighted. She scrambled to the side of the iron door and unwillingly slammed on the door again. In these 3 days, she was so hungry that she was dizzy. Ever since she became a cripple a few days ago, she couldn't take out the food that she had hidden in her inner world. So these few days, she was practically in an abyss of suffering. She was about to go crazy. Without food or water, her lips were so dry that they were cracked from thirst. But when the iron door opened and she saw the person standing at the door, a trace of disappointment involuntarily flashed across second young Miss Sher's heart. It wasn't the second young master. The person who came wasn't the second young master. Of course, it wasn't the second young master's bodyguard, Wang Chung, but the master's right-hand man, Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao's pair of gloomy eyes stared at Shi Yongqian like a poisonous snake. He grinned and looked her up and down several times with ill intentions. I didn't expect that the second young miss of the Shi family would fall to such a state. Shi Yongqian's body couldn't help but shrink back. She opened her mouth, but she knew that she couldn't make a sound. She couldn't help but reach out her hand and gesticulate at Qin Grass. Qin Xiao looked at her with a sneer. Suddenly, he pulled out a dagger from his waist and gave her a sinister smile. Second miss, with your ruined body, you probably don't want to live in this world anymore. Since second miss is too scared to die, how about Qin Xiao send you off? With that, the man took a few steps forward with a cold face and kicked the small iron door shut. Shi Yongqian's eyes spat out flames of fear and panic. She stared at the man in front of her in disbelief. She pounded the ground twice with her hands and glared at Qin Xiao as if she wanted to eat him up. Qin Xiao had only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped. His gaze fell on Shi Yongqian's exposed white calf, and he licked his lips. Shi Yongqian felt that she had experienced all kinds of filthy things in her life. At this moment, how could she not understand the meaning of the man's gaze? She shrank back in fear, her eyes revealing a bone-deep hatred. She leaned against the corner of the wall and kept kicking her legs, wanting to kick Qin Xiao away. But she didn't expect Qin Xiao to throw her away and pounce on her. He quickly tore apart the green robe covering her body and slapped the struggling Shi Yongqian hard across the face. Chapter 3542. Slut, what are you hiding for? It's not like this is the first time. Who knows how many people have toyed with you before? So why pretend to be a pure and chaste woman? I toyed with you because I thought highly of you. I'll let you have a good time before you die. Qin Xiao spat at her, then forcefully tore apart the clothes on her body. He sneered, "If you're obedient, you'll suffer less." Shi Yongqian silently sobbed, her fists forcefully pounding the man's shoulders. However, how could her soft fist be intimidating? Qin Xiao pressed her to the ground with just a few hits and began to use all his strength to torment her. "Little slut, who told you to mess things up? You're unlucky, and you almost implicated family head." Qin Xiao slapped Shi Yongqian's face again. Shi Yongqian immediately collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud, unable to muster any strength in her body. She could only tilt her neck and allow herself to be manipulated, silently shedding tears. Her heart was naturally filled with regret and hatred. Half an hour later, a satisfied Qin Xiao lifted his pants and stood up, kicking Shi Yongqian twice. He crooked his mouth, revealing a trace of a sinister smile. "What are you pretending to be dead for? It's not like you're a young lady in a bridal sedan chair. Once unfamiliar, twice familiar. You can only blame your own bad luck. If family head hadn't ordered for you to die, I would have kept you as a furnace. Although your cultivation has been crippled, there's still a bit of spiritual power in your meridians. Being a furnace isn't bad." Qin Xiao cruelly licked his lips, then kicked Shi Yongqian again. "Little slut, if you don't beg me, perhaps I really can find a way out for you." Bang! The small iron door was kicked open by someone with great force. Shi Yongqian turned her head. When she saw the pure white and elegant figure appear at the door, her entire body trembled. She hastily grabbed the messy weeds on the side and used them to cover her body. Second young master actually came at this time. Compared to the last time they met, she was in an even more sorry state. Why did second young master always have to see her in such a miserable state? Shi Yongxian couldn't help but burst into tears. Her throat made cracking noises due to her grief. Qin Xian coldly glanced at Qin Chao. Suddenly, her palm flew up and landed heavily on Qin Chao's face. Qin Grass was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The slap was solid, leaving 5 bloody marks on his face. Second young master, what are you doing? Qin Grass's face immediately darkened, and he said angrily, although this servant is only a servant, I am still master's man. I warned you last time. Don't lay a hand on Miss Qiao. Qin Xian swung out another slap, landing squarely on Qin Grass' chest. Qin Grass couldn't withstand such a blow and spat out a mouthful of blood. Qin Xian stared coldly at the man in front of her. A black whip appeared in her hand, and she lashed it at the man. The whip had barbs and hidden hooks, and it had been soaked in a special potion. After a person's skin was split open by the whip, the pain in their nerves would be magnified by several hundred times. It was so painful that they wanted to die, and their liver and guts were torn apart. Are all of you ignoring what this young master has said? No, it's not second young master. Qin Chao rolled back and forth on the ground from the whip. He continuously cried out in alarm. Second young master, spare me. Second young master, ah. Chapter 35-43. Shi Yongxian, who was cowering in the corner, immediately relaxed her brows and couldn't hide her excitement and joy. Seeing the man who bullied her being tortured by the second young master to the point of begging for death, she instantly felt much better, so much so that she didn't even hear a single word of the second young master's reprimand. She deceived herself and others by thinking that the second young master acted this time to teach that lowly servant a lesson for her. That lowly servant actually dared to touch her, the second young miss of the Shi family. He deserved to be beaten to this state by the second young master. Hit the main point, hit the main point. Shi Yongxian wrapped herself in straw and cowered in the corner. When she looked at the second young master, her beautiful eyes were filled with deep adoration and excitement. She knew it. She knew that the second young master was extremely good to her. If he knew that she suffered so much here, he would definitely help her teach those lowly servants a lesson. An arbor, that slut, the second young master, definitely wouldn't let her off. She gazed tenderly at the Omega Kitoku young master, her eyes overflowing with dreamy colors. It was as if at this moment, Arbor was already kneeling in front of her, begging for mercy from the second young master's whip, kneeling and licking her. Qin Chao was tormented to death by the second young master's whip dipped in poison, suffering unbearably. He didn't expect that the second young master would not give his father any face and hit him without any hesitation. He was also so vicious to his father's servant. One had to consider the master's face before beating a dog, right? The second young master's actions were like a poisonous thorn being planted in Qin Chao's heart. As the whips fell one after another, the poisonous stinger quickly turned into a bramble, gradually growing and expanding. After a quarter of an hour, Qin Xian stopped. Looking at the mangled figure in front of her, she coldly said, "Throw him out." Wang Cheng immediately stepped forward and pulled up the kneeling Qin Chao. Qin Xian turned around and said coldly to Qin Grass, "Go back and tell my father that I'm going to kill him. I don't want to see this happen again." Old Master is also worried about the second young master. Qin Chao spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Qin Xian with a resentful expression. "No need," Qin Xian coldly replied. "If you dare touch my people again, I'll take your lives next time." Qin Xian glanced at Qin Grass indifferently. The zither and grass quilt were dragged all the way out by Huang Chong and thrown into the flower bed of the garden like a dead dog. Xian, Shi Yongxian called out excitedly, but her expression suddenly froze. She can talk? She could talk all of a sudden? What's going on? The heavens must have pitied her and given her a chance to speak. Shi Yongxian was wild with joy as she rushed forward. She wanted to hug the corner of Qin Xian's robe, but he dodged to the side. The young master of the Omega Kitoka looked at the filthy Shi family's second daughter with disdain and said coldly, Who told you to act on your own accord? Shi Yongqian was stunned and quickly said, Exine, W, what are you saying? Who told you to take matters into your own hands and help my father go to Seacone Planet to arrest the Qiao family members? A trace of grievance instantly filled Shi Yongqian's eyes, but she still carefully said, I did it willingly, Exin. I heard from Uncle that you were seriously injured in the lower star domain, and one of your clones was destroyed. Aye. Shi Yongqian's eyes suddenly widened as she stared at Qin Exine in disbelief. You're criticizing me? Chapter 35-44. Are you blaming me? Shi Yongqian couldn't help but shriek. Why are you blaming me? I'm helping you. Young Master Omega Kitoku's black whip immediately lashed out at Shi Yongqian's face. Shi Yongqian instantly felt a sharp pain on her face, and all the hairs on her body stood on end. Second young master was whipping her. Pa, pa. The whip mercilessly lashed out at Shi Yongqian's body several times. Shi Yongqian was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She had already gone through so many tragic events, and her body and soul had suffered a huge impact. Now that she saw young Master Omega Kitoku mercilessly whipping her, she couldn't accept it emotionally, and her heart was twisted. Why? Why? Shi Yongqian shrieked. Why was Xian treating her like this? What did she do wrong? Wasn't she helping Xian? Why was Xian whipping her like this? It was as if he wanted to whip her to death again and again. It was no different from the violence he had done to Qin Xiao just now. Shi Yongqian felt that her tears had almost dried up in the past 2 days. She couldn't shed any more tears and could only open her mouth and wail. Xian, why are you treating me like this? Xian. Qin Xian kept the whip in his hand and looked indifferently at the battered and blood-stained woman in front of him. A faint sense of satisfaction flashed through his eyes. So, when she was whipping Xiao, she also felt this happy? It turned out that whipping people was quite interesting. Shi Yongqian slightly raised her head. She had always worshipped and loved this man in front of her, so even when he was whipping her, she couldn't take her eyes off him and looked at him like she was crazy. Thus, Shi Yongqian didn't miss the flash of excitement in young Master Omega Kitoku's eyes. She shouldn't have loved such a cruel man. But the flame of love in her heart couldn't be extinguished and couldn't be suppressed. Even if he did such a terrible thing to her and treated her so cruelly, she still loved him wholeheartedly. As long as she could stay by this man's side, even if she was whipped every day, she didn't care. Shi Yongqian crawled forward a few steps and reached out to hook the corner of his robe, shouting, Exine, I love you, Exine, I really love you. I don't have any feelings for you. Qin Exin indifferently stretched his leg and kicked her. Every time I see you, I feel disgusted. Although his tone was calm, his words were like a sharp sword, cutting open Shi Yongqian's heart. If it wasn't because you hindered, I would have married Juyu, because how does Qin, as speaking Kitoku, Yuyuzi Kama, TTTSE, Shi Yongqian cried out, but the infatuation in her eyes did not extinguish. The sudden, she, her, ko kuzes hers, her she, you did this for Arbor? You did this to me for Arbor, didn't you? What did I do wrong? Isn't it enough that she caused me to be in this state? Chapter 35-45. Why Exine? Shi Yongqian pounded the ground as she wailed. Her face that was covered in whip marks was covered in blood and tears. There was no beauty to it at all. Instead, it caused the Omega Kitoku to have a look of disgust. He suddenly remembered that the little girl had also cried like this before. In a fit of anger, he had thrown her into the room and left her to fend for herself for over 10 days. When he came back, he saw that she had moved off the bed on her own. She was lying lifelessly on the ground with her face facing the sky. Tears that were like broken ice beads fell from her eyes drop by drop. She didn't make a sound or cry, but that kind of silent and broken cry made him feel inexplicably heartbroken in an instant. Her pearl-like tears were like broken pearls. At that time, It was as if they were smashed into his heart, making him feel unbearably uncomfortable. Qin Xian's eyes were cold as he once again stepped on Shi Yongqian's other arm. He slightly tilted his head as a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He softly said, "Did you know? She didn't know how to walk before, but she never cried. When she was being whipped by you, she didn't even make a sound. If it wasn't for you, slut, obstructing us, how could we have reached that step?" The Omega Kitoku became agitated as he spoke. He moved his foot, and with two ka-ka sounds, his eyes were cold and cruel as he stepped on Shi Yongqian's two thighs. Shi Yongqian's head was covered in cold sweat as she let out a miserable cry. If it wasn't for you, calling her a cripple, how could she think of leaving me? Shi Yongqian's mouth was filled with blood as she looked at the man in front of her. The light in her eyes was extinguished bit by bit. Suddenly, it was as if she had a final radiance as her entire person brightened up. "Did you know? The woman you're talking about, she is a talisman that cannot be allowed to exist in this world." Talisman cough. Talisman. Cough, cough, cough. Shi Yongqian's eyes were filled with horror as she wanted to reach out and claw at her burning throat. But when he raised his arm, he discovered that his arm was in great pain. It had long been crushed by Qin Xian, and he couldn't lift it at all. "Talisman master?" Qin Xian's eyes were cold as she replied, "I already knew." Shi Yongqian's eyes widened in shock. You slut, you're trying to harm her again." Qin Xian suddenly reached out and grabbed her by the neck, her eyes filled with bloodthirsty, killing intent. "In this life, I won't let you have the chance to hurt her again. Never." Cough, cough. Shi Yongqian felt her breathing tighten, and she was almost unable to say a word. She stared at him in confusion as she mumbled, Xian, how did they end up like this? It wasn't like this before. It wasn't like this." A cold teardrop slid down from the corner of Shi Yongqian's eyes. She suddenly realized that the curse words that the little crown princess had said by her ear seemed to have come true. That evil woman had said that she would die in the hands of the person she loved. That cursed talisman had really taken effect. A cold light flashed in Qin Xian's eyes. His 5 fingers tightened around Shi Yongqian's neck as he watched her slowly lose her breath in his hands. A trace of pleasure flashed past his eyes. Chapter 35-46. She was dead. This bitch who had been cruel to Jojo in his previous life, and who had constantly prevented them from being together, was finally dead. From now on, no one could stop his determination to get back Jojo. No one would ever be able to separate him from Jojo again. Boom! A loud tremor suddenly resounded through the clouds, waking up the entire imperial capital that was shrouded in darkness. All the citizens who had been sleeping peacefully jumped out of their beds, lit their lamps, and opened their windows. They looked at the night sky outside the window in shock. The sky to the east of Dragon Flame City was completely dyed in a pure blue flame. Everyone looked at the scene in the distance in shock, feeling rather shocked in their hearts. Countless Xiozha flew out of their courtyards and rushed towards the Qin estate in the east. What happened to the Qin estate? The loud tremor just now came from the direction of the Qin estate. With such a terrifying tremor, the Qin estate's courtyard must have been damaged a lot. Kaixio got up and hurriedly pushed the door open to enter the little crown princess room. She saw that the little crown princess was still sleeping soundly. She had even turned over and pressed her entire body against the bedding, having a sweet dream. The crown princess' heart is really big. Kaixio's mouth twitched. She quickly closed the door and retreated, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. With such a big commotion outside, even a hibernating dragon would be awakened by the sound. The crown princess could actually sleep so soundly her heart ached for the crown prince. He must be very helpless to hug such a small piece of wood to sleep. During breakfast, Lady Jojo looked at them with a puzzled expression. She could not help but look at her parents, second uncle, second aunt, and the others. "What's wrong?" The little fellow stirred the porridge in his bowl and looked at his parents in confusion. "Ahem," second uncle coughed. "Jojo, didn't you hear anything last night?" Arbor's little hand paused, and his little face immediately tensed. Did a thief enter the house? No, no. Second Uncle Chow hurriedly waved his hand and said with a speechless expression, "It wasn't a thief who broke into the house." There was a big commotion in the east of the city. In the middle of the night last night, the whole family woke up with a start. They put on their clothes and ran outside. Everyone met up in the garden. Even Xiao's son, the brat, ran out with them. Who knew, however, he did not see the little crown princess. Everyone anxiously ran to Pear Blossom Courtyard to look for the little crown princess. But Li told them that the crown princess was sleeping very well. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sir Jojo frowned. With a wave of his sleeve, a small tray ant appeared in his hand. "What did you do?" "Master, it's going to be summer soon. Cicadas and birds are chirping outside. It's very noisy. Master doesn't like to sleep on Paradise Planet." Then Xiao can only help Master block out all sounds from the outside. Everyone's lips twitched. No wonder the little fellow didn't react to such a huge commotion last night. It turned out that Xiao had secretly blocked out all sounds from the outside world. Arbor nodded his little head. Well done." Then he raised his hand and patted the little Trent's head, sending it back to Paradise Planet. "Sister, aren't you curious at all?" Little Xiao San bit on a chopstick and looked curiously at his sister. "Mother said that the explosion in the middle of the night yesterday blew up several houses in the east side of the Qin estate. What does that have to do with me?" Arbor scooped a bowl of soup with an indifferent expression. Chapter 35:47. Stirring the spoon in the small bowl, Arbor picked up the small soup bowl and sipped it in small mouthfuls. When everyone saw her indifferent gaze, they assumed that she didn't want to ask too much about the Qin estate's family matters, so they smiled and didn't say anything. Xiao Sen mumbled something. Wei Ziqin smiled and rubbed Xiao Sen's head. "Meddlesome. How can we meddle in the affairs of those large clans? Some things can only be heard from others. Don't casually judge." "Oh." Xiao Sun pursed his lips and turned around to take the half piece of mantou from the little monk's bowl and stuffed it into his mouth. The little monk immediately scrunched up his bun-like face. "Benefactress's younger brother, why did you snatch this little monk's mantou? Snatching someone's food isn't the conduct of a gentleman." Xiao Sun lowered his head to look at the mantou in his hand, then glanced at the little monk. "Didn't I just eat a piece of your mantou? Why are you talking about a gentleman?" All right, Kong Kong, there's more here." Madame Ren didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she placed a small plate of mantou in front of the little monk. Only then did this nagging little fellow shut his mouth. Last night, the entire imperial capital was in turmoil and chaos. Because of the commotion caused by the Qin estate in the city's east, the imperial capital's patrol squads were all mobilized. Many of the Crimson Forest Guards and City Defense Army also went out. The Chow family members didn't sleep well either. In the middle of the night, there was chaos outside. Moreover, they lived on Changle Street, which was closest to the imperial city, so the neighing of horses could be heard incessantly. There was nothing to do after breakfast, so Xiao Zhongbong and his wife, as well as second uncle and his wife, returned to their rooms to catch up on sleep. Xiao Hu said with a smile, "Younger sister, Xiao Yao and I plan to go out for a walk. Do you want to come along?" Arbor shook her head. "I'll go in and cultivate for a while." "Okay." When Arbor returned to her Pear Blossom Courtyard, her expression abruptly changed the moment she stepped into her room. Without another word, she flicked her sleeve and several bone-chilling lights shot toward the window. However, she saw a black figure suddenly enter through the window, and with lightning speed, he grabbed her small hand. "Let go." Arbor's cold voice sounded. It was as if a cold pearl had fallen into an icy river, revealing traces of coldness. "Xiao Qiao, you're really ruthless." A long sigh slowly sounded in her ears. The little stoic's expression chilled, and she slightly tilted her head. She gazed apathetically at the man who suddenly barged into the Pear Blossom Courtyard. "Do you really want me to die that badly?" "Xiao Qiao." He sighed again, his gaze fixed on her body. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly with an innocent expression that said, I don't understand what you're talking about. His eyes looked back at him coldly. After a while, Mr. Omega Katoku said, Jojo, you're meticulous and calculative. No woman can compare to you. Arbor looked at him coldly and suddenly pulled his hand back. You'd better get out of here. It's too late. No one knows what will happen. You know that the person who appointed Shi Yongxian will come to silence her. Mr. Omega Katoku suddenly said. That's why the curse you cast on her will force Shi Yongxian's soul to self-detonate the moment she's about to die. Arbor turned his head and gazed deeply at him. Although this second young master didn't know what kind of vicious curse he cast on Shi Yongxian, his judgment could be considered accurate. However, there was one point Mr. Omega Katoku didn't know. Chapter 35-48. She didn't know that the one who secretly sent Shi Yongxian to Seacone Planet to cause trouble was their Qin Estate's patriarch. Now she knew. A glint of hatred flashed through Arbor's eyes. Family patriarch Qin had plotted to take her life time and time again. This time, he even indulged in the wildest of fantasies and wanted to secretly capture her family. With the old grudges added together, the enmity between her and the Qin estate would only deepen. Qin Xian, listen carefully. Arbor gazed at him coldly and said expressionlessly, What I cast on Shi Yongxian was a curse. I curse her to die in the hands of the person she loves the most. Arbor tilted his head slightly and looked at the man in front of him with sparkling eyes. The person Shi Yongxian loves the most is you. As expected, you didn't disappoint me. Don't say any more. Don't say any more. Qin Xian seemed to have suddenly realized something. His expression was pained, and his handsome face contorted slightly. From beginning to end, what I want is not the life of the mastermind behind this. However, Arbor's voice was still so cold that it was a bit cruel. Don't say any more, all right? I beg you, don't say any more. Qin Xian's expression suddenly turned sinister as he roared angrily. Arbor retreated step by step and spat out 5 words with a cruel expression. It's your life. What a pity. As expected, the self-detonation of a cripple's soul is useless. She snorted coldly without any expression on her stoic face. As if to tell the person in front of her that she was really similar, she said coldly, Don't think that your fake gentleness can move my heart. Do you think that we will still cross paths in this lifetime? Stop dreaming, all right? Let me put it this way. In the past, there was a silly and naive little girl who gave you all her reverence, and then her entire being was trampled to pieces by you. That feeling is already gone. Even if another 10 lifetimes pass, what's gone is gone. It won't happen again. Xiao Qiao, I know I was wrong in the past, but in this life, nothing has happened. Can you not always hold on to the past? Qin Xian's voice was slightly choked up, and her eyes were filled with shallow tears. It did happen. Arbor's eyes widened as he clenched his fists tightly. Unable to control the anger in his heart, he shouted, It all happened. Yes, you once rescued me from the dungeon. At that time, I was truly grateful to you. I even saw you as a life-saving rope that I encountered when I was wandering in the abyss of despair. What about you? What do you take me for? Do you need me to repeat to you how you treated me? You told me not to cling to the past, but what about you? Why can't you let it go? In this life, I only want to be strangers with you. Qin Xian. It's so simple. Can't you do it? Since you insist on pestering me again and again, I can only scheme to kill you. Jojo, I'm serious about you. The second young master clutched his chest in pain. He felt as if this place was being torn apart, and the torment was unbearable. Arbor suddenly turned to look out the window and swiftly leaped out. But she saw a bolt of lightning and fire streaking across the blue sky at an extremely fast speed, enveloping her with a whoosh. Jojo. Qin Xian's figure suddenly darted out of the window and pounced to her side. Chapter 35-49. Lord Jojo did not expect Omega Katoku to throw himself at her without any regard for his life. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, But who would have thought that this guy's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast enough to push her behind him? At the same time, the Thunderfire had already smashed into the second young master's body with a thunderous rumble at the speed of lightning. Although Omega Kitoku had set up a defensive barrier around himself, the power of the Thunderfire was not to be underestimated. It broke through his defensive barrier in an instant. Chi, a flame slowly burned on the back of his hand. "Are you all right?" Chin Exin lowered his head and glanced at Arbor. The latter was looking at him with a complicated expression. A faint light flickered in his icy, jade-like eyes. Xiao Mu wanted to reprimand him, but when her gaze met his, she felt like she was unable to say anything. She turned her little head and faced Omega Kitoku with the back of her head. At the same time, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal stepped out of Paradise Planet. He reached out and grabbed the little fellow's wrist, pulling her to his side. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's sharp gaze swept over Omega Kitoku's body. His gaze paused slightly when he saw the faint traces of flames on his wrist. What's going on? When he was on Paradise Planet, he did not always pay attention to what was going on outside. Who would have thought that he would almost be scared to death by this little fellow? Why would there be a thunder fire in the sky out of nowhere? The young crown prince consort's scowling little face was expressionless. The thunder fire in the sky was also very strange. After it struck down, it seemed to have been punched violently. It flew backward toward the ninth heaven. Above the blue sky, a faint shadow was left behind, and its tail was even twitching. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal studied the direction in which the thunder fire had flown and was speechless. "What is this thunder fire for?" Arbor said calmly. "To strike me." That's right. When she cast the cursed talisman, she knew that this talisman would definitely attract the flames of the heavenly Tao. What he didn't expect was that after Shi Yongqian's death last night, the lightning and fire had been delayed until now. Furthermore, this lightning fire was really just a casual strike. After a single strike, he ran away. How funny was this lightning fire? Arbor glanced at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was also looking down at her. Instinctively, he raised his hand and patted her head. With a serious expression, he said, "Jojo, don't do anything that will make us worry." Xiaomu nodded her small head guiltily. She knew that cursed talismans weren't good things, but that day, she just wanted to be willful for once. That's right. Even if she had to suffer the pain of being burned by lightning and fire in the future, she still wanted to end it quickly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at her. Seeing that she was fine, he nodded and glanced at Chin Xin. "Sir Omega Kitoku, it's not very appropriate for you to trespass on private property, is it?" Chin Xin glanced at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and said indifferently, "I'm looking for Jojo. Jojo doesn't seem like she wants to see you." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sneered and looked Chin Xin up and down. "Are you looking for trouble, second young master?" Chin Xin ignored the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. She turned and stared deeply at Arbor. Then, she said indifferently, "Little Xiao, although I can't reverse the past, I can control the future. I hope you believe me." Chapter 3550. From now on, nothing that harms you will ever happen again. I will also get rid of the people who have harmed you in the past. The little stoic was expressionless, and her entire body was like a small wooden stake. She stood there stiffly and said, "No need." Humph. She would get rid of her enemies on her own. Why would she need his help? Moreover, she simply didn't need him to save her just now. Just look at how loud the lightning fire was and how weak the fire was. It was as crooked as a little bedbug. How could it burn her? Sir Jojo. This guy just had to interfere. Sir Jojo felt very uncomfortable in her heart after being protected by him. Her small face tensed up in displeasure and tensed up forcefully. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at her and couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. He waved his hand at Chin Xin and said, "Jojo doesn't want to talk to you. Hurry and leave." Chin Xin wasn't angry and nodded. She looked at Arbor and said, "I'm very sorry about the Qiao family. I will restrain them and won't let the servants find trouble with you again." Arbor glanced at him and humphed. She suddenly raised her hand and threw him a bottle of medicinal powder. "Even if you didn't block it, I could still handle that lightning fire." The little fellow turned her head and pattered back in her room, grumbling impatiently, "Meddlesome." Chin Xin glanced at the little fellow's back and gripped the medicinal bottle in her hand. Dong! He kicked the door shut. Sir Jojo turned around and glared at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal standing behind her. She rolled her eyes in exasperation. "What are you doing?" She sat down at the table. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned around, flicked aside a corner of his robe, and slowly sat down across from her. He propped up his chin with one hand and looked at her with a chuckle. "What outrageous things did you do? Your relative couldn't hold himself back and ran over to warn you?" Arbor pursed her small lips and didn't say a word. "Sigh, it looks like I can't get you to reveal the truth." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal took out a jade messenger talisman from his inner world and pretended to draw with a talisman pen. "How should I write it?" Jojo was naughty. Jojo was struck by lightning. "Hurry up and come back to discipline your wife." Arbor glared at him a few times and raised his hand to grab the jade talisman. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned his hand over and pressed down on her small hand. The playful expression on his face faded slightly as he said sternly, "Jojo, no matter when or where, don't punish yourself for others. Is that okay?" Arbor looked at his serious eyes, bit his lips, and nodded reluctantly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal laughed and flicked her head. "Hey, you promised me. Speaking of which, was it really the curse that attracted the divine punishment?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked with a smile. Xiao Mu subconsciously nodded her small head. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's smile deepened. "Before you used that talisman, you already knew that you would incur divine punishment." A faint desire to live ignited in Arbor's heart. Then, she shook her head forcefully. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled. "Aren't you going anywhere these few days? How about going to the fish orchid planet to cultivate?" Arbor nodded. She felt that it was best not to court death at this time. She felt that the man in front of her seemed to be a little angry. "Oh, Jojo won't use the cursed talisman in the future, right?" Arbor nodded, but couldn't help muttering inwardly. "I'll try my best. You're not fooling me, are you?" Chapter 35:51. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal suppressed his smile and coughed lightly. He looked at the young lady in front of him seriously and said, "I didn't say that I wouldn't tell you. I'm just looking at the situation. Should I plead for leniency on your behalf?" Arbor! Exclamation point. "I'll tolerate you." Resisting the urge to beat him up, Lord Jojo snorted and jumped into Fish Orchid Planet. She planned to listen to Rotten Peach Blossom and cultivate in peace for a few days. These few days, she frequently entered a state of epiphany. She had a feeling that she was about to make a small advancement again. She should cultivate obediently so that she wouldn't have to wander around outside and be disturbed by all sorts of things. Before Arbor entered Fish Orchid Planet, he deliberately placed a few demonic eyes around the Qiao residence. This way, even if something happened outside, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the rest would be able to detect it immediately. However, he reckoned that nothing would happen at the Qiao residence in the near future. After all, the little crown princess had just used the Sure family to establish her authority. As long as one wasn't a fool, no one would pick a time like this to provoke the little crown princess. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Qiao residence. A slender figure came out of the carriage. Holding the hand of a young maidservant, she slowly walked out of the carriage and raised her head to look at the lintel of the Qiao residence. Bam, bam. The servant girl went forward and knocked on the door, but there was no sound of the door opening. She turned back and exchanged a look with the lady. "Miss, this family doesn't seem to be home." The lady's eyes flashed. She took a few steps forward and knocked on the door a few more times. "Miss, shouldn't we send a visiting card first? Let them know that Miss is coming to the Qiao residence to visit the crown princess," the servant girl said with a frown. "Who was her miss?" She was a famous god-level alchemist in the 3 continents. She had lowered herself to visit the Qiao residence, but was rejected at the door. Single-clothed, Sue smiled and patted her hand. Then, she looked up at the Qiao residence's plaque and said with a smile, "We have nothing to do anyway. There's no harm in waiting." When the little girl heard this, she immediately curled her lips in displeasure. "Miss, you really have a good temper. With your status, no matter where you go, they will welcome you with open doors," the little girl muttered. "Only the Qiao family doesn't take you seriously." Shan Isu shook her head with a smile. "If we come here abruptly, no one will know. It's fine to wait." Thus, the master and servant got back into the carriage and waited until the evening came. The little girl puffed up her cheeks and said indignantly, "This family is really too much. It's been so long, and even a servant doesn't come out to buy groceries." Shan Isu also felt very strange, so she led the little girl out of the car and knocked on the door of the Qiao residence. This time, they didn't have to wait for long before the door was pulled open. A yawning manservant appeared at the entrance of the Qiao residence. He blinked his dog eyes and looked curiously at the master and servant pair. "Ladies, who are you looking for?" The little girl immediately shouted in dissatisfaction. "Our family's alchemist Shan is here to visit the crown princess." That manservant sized them up again and made a comical "oh" sound. Then, he prepared to close the door. The crown princess is not seeing guests recently. The little girl was about to explode in anger. She pushed that manservant. "Hey, didn't you hear what I said? Why did you close the door? Why are you pushing people?" The manservant said unhappily. Chapter 35:53. Such a large area of sand had only appeared in the Aurora Desert outside Qinghua City. How could this village, which was originally in good condition, be buried by the sand? According to the villagers, the sandstorm came abruptly, and several villages were buried by the sand. The nearby villagers had no choice but to swarm towards Huiping Village. Huiping Village managed to survive because it was on a higher ground. It was said that the sand covered the sky and covered all the nearby villages. It flowed for 2 days and 3 nights before it stopped. However, whether it was the nearby streams or the fields, they were all buried under the barren sand. Just as the villagers of these villages were helplessly preparing to move, many zombies suddenly emerged from the sand and began to crazily claw and bite people. The villagers were not prepared at first, and many of them were hit. Those who were hit gradually changed in the crowd, injuring even more people. Therefore, in these villages, other than a small group of villagers who were smarter and survived, the rest all became zombies. This was something that could not be helped. After all, no one knew that these monsters would breed more monsters. Huiping Village was a small village that could not be found on the map of the Divine Lands. The villagers usually did not care about what was happening outside and lived their lives peacefully. Who knew that the outside world had already given birth to such a terrifying creature as zombies? The villagers had also slowly learned how to protect themselves during the battle. The remaining 1,000 villagers could be said to be a group of people who were more capable of fighting. A small number of them had even gained special abilities from their misfortune, and they were still adapting to their new abilities. Third Fu opened the curtain and came in. He patted the dust off his body and shook his head. "It seems like the wind is blowing again outside." An old-fashioned man standing behind Prince Imo looked out of the tent when he heard that. "Your Highness, we can't go on like this. If we can't think of a good countermeasure and can't kill all the zombies in one blow, our people won't be able to take it if we continue to fight them like this. Not only will our people not be able to take it, we won't be able to keep up with our food. Especially in this kind of broken environment where yellow sand filled the sky, the wind and sand were strong, eating dust and dirt every day, people would be in a bad mood. You don't have to worry about food and water," Imo Yin said indifferently. "Fong Su, none of the people who went to investigate nearby have returned." The man with an old-fashioned face and a very serious expression nodded when he heard this. "They're all waiting outside. Your Highness wants to see them now." Imo Yin nodded. Let them in. He needed to know how many undead puppets were hidden in the nearby desert. First, he had to figure out their numbers and then formulate a plan to deal with them. What Fong Su said was also somewhat reasonable. These damn things, they had to be annihilated in one blow. It was best to end the battle quickly. Your Highness! Your Highness! How dare you? How dare you trespass into the main tent? Who gave you the guts? The guard's angry shout came from outside. No, little brother, I have something to discuss with His Highness. I want to report that bastard Wang Dongping for hiding his sister's zombie. He wants to kill everyone in our village. A sharp cry rang out from outside the tent. Chapter 3554. A middle-aged skinny man with a pointy mouth, monkey-like cheeks, and rolling eyes was pushed into the tent from outside. His face was bruised and swollen, as if he had been beaten up. Other than Fu San and Fong Su, there were a few other soldiers in the tent. When they saw this person's strange face, they couldn't help but snicker. That person looked like a lackey. When he saw Prince Mo sitting in the middle of the tent, he quickly knelt down and prostrated himself on the ground. He flatteringly said, "This lowly one greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. You're making a ruckus in the army. Do you know what punishment you deserve?" Emollien's handsome face was cold as he asked in a light voice. That person jumped in fright and quickly raised his head and stammered, Your Highness, this lowly one didn't do it on purpose. This lowly one is really, really angry. That Wang Dongping has bad intentions. He secretly raised his corpse puppet's sister in the tent. Your Highness, this lowly one is called Wang Sheng. Every word I said is true. I hope Your Highness can judge clearly. Emollien looked at this person with a heavy gaze and waved his hand lightly. A soldier immediately cupped his hands and left. For a moment, the tent was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Wang Sheng was so scared that he knelt on the tip of a needle. His body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Not long after, Wang Dongping and a short woman were brought in one after another. When the two siblings saw so many people in the tent, they didn't panic. Instead, they calmly knelt down at the same time and bowed. This lowly one greets Your Highness. Your Highness, it's him. His sister Wang Dongsue's arm was torn by a corpse puppet. This grandson hid his sister in the tent and didn't report it. Sooner or later, he will harm all of us. Your Highness, it's not like that. I have a way to control the corpse poison in my sister's body. I can guarantee that she won't mutate in the near future. Wang Dongping suddenly raised his head and said in a deep voice, The corpse poison can be controlled, Your Highness. Bullshit. Wang Sheng was about to refute when Emollien coldly interrupted him. Let him continue. Wang Sheng resentfully shut his mouth. Wang Dongping looked up and said, This commoner is an apothecary. After the medicinal efficacy leveled up, I realized that it could help my sister control the corpse poison within her arm. As long as the corpse poison doesn't spread throughout her body and enter her head, my sister will be able to maintain her consciousness and won't undergo corpse transformation. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look warily at the Wang siblings. Emollien looked at the brother and sister deeply. After a while, she nodded and signaled to the two soldiers standing at the side with her eyes. The two soldiers stepped forward and pulled up Wang Dongsue's sleeves. The wound on Wang Dongsue's left arm was purplish-black, and the rotten flesh had been removed. Although the wound was difficult to heal, it could be seen that the injury was indeed under control. The surrounding skin was normal. Do you think pharmacists are amazing? Wang Sheng cursed. Pharmacists aren't omnipotent. Even if your sister doesn't turn into a zombie today, can you guarantee that she won't turn into a zombie in a month or 3 months? I want to separate you and your sister from the others. Do you have any objections? Emollien said indifferently. Your Highness the Crown Prince. Wang Sheng became anxious when he heard this. What was wrong with His Highness? Wang Dongsue was about to turn into a zombie, but he didn't kill her and only isolated her. Shut up. Fong Su berated. Chapter 3555. After being reprimanded, Wang Sheng's heart jumped in fright, but he still couldn't stop himself from muttering, This is what it is. For things like corpse puppets, if we don't kill them now, if she acts up and goes crazy in the tent area, it will harm many people. His Highness has his own considerations. You don't need to say more about this. Fong Su glared at the monkey-cheeked man with dissatisfaction, then casually ordered the guard beside him. Take him out. Wang Sheng was pushed out in a flustered and exasperated manner. For a moment, the tent was very quiet. Everyone looked at the kneeling Wang Dongping and his sister with a strange gaze. How long have you been controlling her? At this moment, Emo Lien asked. Wang Dongping was apprehensive. He looked up at the handsome man in black armor, sitting in the center of the tent, and stammered twice. Then he gathered his courage and said, From the first day she was attacked by the corpse puppet until today, it has been about 5 or 6 days. Her arm has always been like this. Wang Dongping nodded. Previously, my sister's arm was shrouded in black qi. Then, after this commoner used medicine to control her, the black qi also disappeared a lot. Emolian nodded indifferently, then waved her hand. 2 soldiers walked over and invited the brother and sister out. Wang Dongping and his sister didn't have much confidence in their hearts. They looked at each other, then entered a tent with fear and trepidation. Looking out from a small window, there were 4 guards standing guard outside the tent. It seems that they were really isolated. Big brother, will something happen? Wang Dongtse was silent for a moment and said, Don't worry, Dong Sui. Since His Highness the Crown Prince didn't make things difficult, it means that he believes what I said before. At the same time, in the tent, several young generals were puzzled. One of them stepped forward and said, Your Highness, although that person suppressed the corpse puppet poison in his sister's body. But we don't know if it's true. That's right, Your Highness, if we leave that girl in the tent area, Shimo Yin said faintly, we will go take a closer look at it later. What he didn't say was that he had previously suspected that medicine could control corpse poison. Now, it seemed that one had to reach the level of an advanced apothecary to have any effect on corpse poison. However, there were truly very few apothecaries in the world, and that Wang Dongping was a rare talent. Does Your Highness want to take that Wang Dongping for your own use? Third Fu frowned. Wang Dongsui's rights. He's rights, right? That's right. Several young generals nodded in agreement. His Highness's rights, right? His SMO Yin swept them a glance. We know what to do. Go some summit. His Afing handed the teacup to him and said quietly, Your Highness, someone from the night pavilion delivered news about the crown princess. Mo Yin glanced at the message Hui Feng delivered and flipped it open to read, a hint of a smile on her face. As expected, his wife hadn't been idle. Greetings to Your Highness the Crown Prince. A group of men who had gone to the desert to investigate corpse puppets filed in and saluted. Mo Yin pressed down the paper in her hand and looked up at them. Everyone, tell me about the nearby situation. Chapter 35:56. In the ocean of Fish Orchid Star, countless islands rose and fell. Arbor was cultivating on one of these quiet islands, and no one disturbed him for the past few days. After she opened her eyes, she first used her divine perception to sense the surrounding islands. Her younger sister, Jolin, was practicing the usage of water spirit on the neighboring island. Fairy Yellow Crane had successfully refined a cauldron of Earth-grade pills and officially stepped into the ranks of Earth-grade pill refiners. She was currently dancing with joy on the small island. Yellow Crane, do you want to follow this lord out of the island? Yellow Crane was also quite pitiful. Ever since she was thrown onto the island, she had been concentrating on refining pills for so long. Her mouth was probably bland at first. Fairy Yellow Crane thought she was hallucinating. 3 seconds later, she jumped up and shouted, Yes. Oh, Lord Xiao Xiao finally remembered that he was the one who was refining pills on this island where birds don't shit and chickens don't lay eggs. It really wasn't easy. Fairy Yellow Crane took a deep breath, then turned her head to look back and forth. She couldn't help but shout, Jojo, where are you? I'm on the island next to you. Far away. The little fellow's faint voice floated into her ears, inexplicably making Fairy Yellow Crane feel that it was as pleasant as the sound of nature. "Then when are we going out?" "Any time." Lord Jojo blinked and made Chocho grab Fairy Yellow Crane from the pill refining island to his side. The scene in front of them instantly changed. When Yellow Crane was caught by Chocho, she was still hugging her medicine cauldron. When she saw Arbor standing in front of her, she was so excited that she even threw away her medicine cauldron and stretched out her arms to hug Arbor. "Jojo!" Arbor pinched his nose with one hand and retreated a few steps. His little eyes were somewhat disdainful as he looked her up and down. "Why are you so smelly again?" Fairy Yellow Crane raked her messy hair and chuckled. "I got busy and forgot to take a bath, hee." With that, Fairy Yellow Crane suddenly felt her body lighten. She was wrapped up by a vine and thrown into the sea to soak in it. After Huang, he finished washing up and changing into clean clothes, she hopped ashore. The little stoic, who was wearing a purple robe and had her long hair held up by a jade hairpin, was already waiting for her on the beach. "Jojo!" Yellow Crane Fairy insisted on giving Jojo a hug of love. "Jojo!" Sama expressed his helplessness. Everyone she met liked to give her a hug. Sigh, she was so pretty that even the heavens were jealous of her beauty. As she thought, her small hand involuntarily stroked her little stoic face, and she turned to look at the grinning Fairy Huang He. "Huang He, congratulations on becoming an Earth-grade alchemist." "Ha ha ha!" Fairy Yellow Crane immediately had a smug look on her face. She could not help but laugh with her hands on her hips. Jojo, Sama felt that he had praised him wrongly. While the two people were talking, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal dashed over in a faintly discernible red robe. He examined Xiao Mu from head to toe before commenting with a smile. "Not bad. Although you only advanced by 2 small realms, it looks like your cultivation has consolidated a lot more than before." Arbor was naturally quite satisfied, although he only skipped gradual attainment this time and entered the initial success stage of a level 13 Great Spiritualist. But just as the Peach Blossom said, his cultivation had consolidated a lot more than before. Fairy Yellow Crane pulled her small hand and said, "Jojo, I still need a few ingredients to refine the Earth-grade breakthrough spirit pill." "It's fine. We'll talk after we get out." Chapter 3558. "Yes," Li expressionlessly said. That day, everyone went to catch up on sleep after eating breakfast. They slept the entire afternoon and only woke up very late to eat. That had seemed to be the case. It was the day after the Qin estate was bombed, right? Wei Ziqin thought for a moment before nodding. It should be the day Jojo went into closed-door cultivation. Arbor humphed. "She must be exaggerating to scare me." Li nodded. "Crown Princess. Then we're just going to let her chase him into the army? And disturb his highness?" Arbor pursed her lips. "We have to see Jojo's lotus first." Wei Ziqin smiled as she grasped her daughter's hand. "All right, Jojo, let's not talk about this. Let's go eat. You were in closed-door cultivation for so long, but you didn't even get to drink a sip of soup." The mother and daughter pair called for the little Yellow Crane to leave the room. At the same time, 500 kilometers away, at the army's encampment in Huiping Village, Huifeng blocked the two women with a smile and said with an indifferent gaze, "Apologies, His Highness is currently discussing matters with several generals in the tent, so it's not convenient for him to receive Alchemist Dan. Alchemist Dan, please return." St. Claude Sue stood in front of Huifeng. Her servant girl was following behind her, holding a bowl of something. It looked like she was here to deliver a tonic to His Highness. Huifeng swept a glance at the stew bowl, but he still blocked St. Claude Sue with a beaming smile. St. Claude Sue wasn't angry and nodded very politely at Huifeng. "Little brother, since His Highness is busy with official business, then I'll have to trouble little brother to deliver this bowl of snow lotus seed soup to His Highness." Huifeng glanced at her with a spurious smile and shook his head. "Apologies, Alchemist Dan. His Highness's diet is specially prepared by a physician. For safety reasons, He can't casually consume food from outside. Please forgive me, Alchemist Dan. St. Clothed Sue's smiling face stiffened slightly. She didn't say anything, but the little girl behind her, Meilon, couldn't help but shout, "Hey, how can you say that? Are you saying that our Alchemist Dan will poison the snow lotus seed soup?" Meilon. Single-clothed, Sue scolded softly. Not only did these words not make Meilon shut up, but it also aroused the little girl's anger like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Meilon held the tray and stomped over to the single-robed Sue, wishing for nothing more than to throw the tray at Huifeng. "How dare you be so rude to our young miss?" Meilon shouted in exasperation. "This is a soup that our miss personally made with fresh snow lotus." Huifeng couldn't help rolling his eyes. Was there something wrong with this master and servant pair? If he dared to send this bowl of soup in today, the news of the night pavilion would be delivered to the crown princess tomorrow, and he would not be able to live a good life. Besides, perhaps before the little crown princess took his life, the crown prince had already found him an eyesore and slapped him to death. He simply didn't want face when he was given it, and insisted on playing the role of bad cop. Huifeng was just about to harshly reprimand this master and servant pair with a stern expression. On the other side, third young master Fu lifted the curtain and stood at the entrance with a spurious smile. "I was wondering who it was. So it's Alchemist Dan." Third Fu curled his lips and cast an indifferent glance at single-clothed Sue. Interesting. This woman actually chased him all the way to Greyfield Village, and now wanted to enter his room and enjoy the benefits of being in a favorable position. Did she really think that the little fiend in the capital was just a decoration? Third Fu couldn't help but shake his head. As expected, this Alchemist Dan before him was very bold and skilled. Chapter 35:59. However, with her reputation as a god-level alchemist, it was true that a large group of cultivators would flock to her like a flock of ducks. It was no wonder that she was so fearless in doing things. She looked smart, but the way she did things was rather out of line. Third Fu shook his head again. "Alchemist Shan, His Highness hopes that if you have time, you can help the commoners in the commoner district. They were hungry a while ago, so please help them check on their stomach and intestines and see if they have any injuries." Okay. Shan Isu nodded gently and agreed. Third young master Fu, please tell His Highness not to worry. Shan Isu will definitely do her best to help him. Third Fu did not correct him. He simply nodded and went back into the tent. In any case, he could just send her far away. As for the diagnosis, let her be. If she was willing, then she could help the military doctors. If she was unwilling, then it was fine. There were enough alchemists and doctors in the military anyway. "Miss, why are you so easy to talk to?" If not for the fact that the soup in her hand was precious, Meilon, the little maid beside Shawnee Sue, would really want to smash this bowl of soup. Her miss had worked hard to make this soup, but His Highness the Crown Prince did not appreciate it at all. It must have been hard for Miss to be so good-natured and not be angry at all. She actually agreed to that third young Master Fu's words and ran over to treat those dirty commoners. What kind of joke was this? Meilon, who followed Shan Isu to the commoner's resting area, had a disdainful expression on her face. This commoner's resting area was still a short distance away from the army's encampment. Before His Highness the Crown Prince had arrived, the remaining commoners had used the local materials, rocks, and sand to build a circle of low earth walls around them. The small earth walls barely reached the women's waists. If they huddled behind the sand walls, they could at least shelter themselves from the wind and sand. If he wanted to resist the corpse puppet, he could forget about it. There were also people who built a few holes behind the small mud wall, which could allow the children and the weak women to hide in. The environment was harsh, and food was scarce. After so many days of fierce fighting, these people's bodies were already exhausted. If His Highness the Crown Prince had not led the army over and temporarily blocked the waves of zombies outside, perhaps the remaining people would have already been eaten by the zombies. It's so dirty. When Meilon passed by a child who was sitting outside the sand wall and looking at her with dull eyes, she waved her hand twice and covered her nose with a look of disgust. The woman beside the child hurriedly hugged her child and looked at them warily. Sue didn't seem to mind the dirt. She squatted down and didn't care about the mint green long skirt. It dragged on the ground and was dusty from the sand. Is your child a little feverish? I noticed that his complexion doesn't seem right. Give me your hand. Sean Isu smiled gently. That smile made the woman holding the child let down her guard a little, and she handed the child's hand to Sean Isu. After Sean Isu took the child's pulse, she smiled and said, "It's nothing serious. Let the child take this cold and heat pill, and he'll be fine after a while." The woman took it suspiciously and watched the pretty woman leave. Sue led Meilon, who was pouting and complaining, to stroll around the civilian district. She specifically picked 2 or 3 children to look at before leading Meilon back to her own tent. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.